All right. Let's see here. How do you use it though? That's what I want to see. Because I remember opening it before. Okay. Hey, what's going on? How are you? How's it going? I'm trying to look at the trading view screeners and see if I can find a good guide for it so I can use it today. I've got some pretty good trades going right now. I'm not too worried about being perfect this week, but there's a lot of good screeners out there, so I'm working on it. Yeah, that's what it says, but I'm not seeing that on the menus, so let's see. It's on the website. Let's see if I can find it on the app, though. So, let's see here. It's freaky. Well, the reason I don't want to use the website in part is because I want to. Oh, Wolf. Wolf is down. I think that's good. Actually, I'm not sure if it's down or if it's up. I have to go look. I think that's down though. Is the oh, there's a ton of stuff on here. Oh, let's see. Well, the screener's fine, but where is it in the app? And can you not use it? Might be in products, screeners. There it is. Boom. I haven't screened in a long time. Hey, good morning. Mostly because a lot of the stuff that I get is just basically through you guys or just on my own, reading up on something and finding a good pick that I like. That's how I find some of these weird ones, but that's good. So Wolf is down. That's actually a good thing. Wolf needed to come down to 127. There's an issue with Wolf as a good pick because it's got some problems. Um, but it's a low enough buy-in that you probably could get 100% trade on this pretty easily. I think the last couple times it popped, it was like 100% or more. This one obviously was huge. This was like 700, which is ridiculous. But even like a mild pop right here was 120%. This one was 37%. So I'm liking the setup because I really want to see it come back down. And if it can check and bottom out here, make a higher low and break out, it should have a decent breakout. Even if it's not the best, it should go to at least like $2. Like it doesn't have to be like all-time highs or something. So from where it stands, it could be quite a significant trade. It's sitting around $1 and it goes to $2, that's a big move. But this is a tricky one to see because the chart is pretty huge. And there's a problem with Wolf is that it's super volatile. So I mean, you could lose just as much, just as fast if you're not careful. It's got the bankruptcy, Chapter 11. So bankruptcy is a problem because when they restructure, you may lose a considerable portion of your... I wonder why that's not showing. You may lose a considerable portion of the total. Here it is. It's complicated, but I view this as like really a tight setup that could be very, 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 very bullish with a kind of squeeze motion. But I think the goal there would be to get out of positions, cover short positions before the restructuring happens, which is probably going to be sooner than later. I'm not seeing it go beyond like $4, very likely. I mean, there's possibilities it goes significantly higher, but I think $4 is the main cross here, and I don't see it going farther than that. Early on in the days of Wolf, $4 was actually a pretty regular price before it went into this like macro distribution phase. Now in a super long term, maybe, you never know. If there was a huge massive squeeze, yeah, it could go up to like not $1,000, but it could go up to like back to previous highs, like, a couple hundred. I don't think that's very likely. I don't think it's very likely going to happen. But there's two things that could really send this stock, and one of them is a mixed bag. One is the Chapter 11 kind of finishing up with the restructuring. That could be very beneficial, at least at first, although typically you lose value during that process. The other would be, I can see that too. I should take note of that. The other would be the CHIPS Act. And the CHIPS Act is a strange one because it's a Biden administration act that pretty much from a knee-jerk reaction, Trump said he didn't like it. But I don't really get it. I mean, he said he didn't like it because it was government spending, I suppose. And maybe he thought that there were other things that were wrong with it. But it was giving money to like American chip makers and manufacturers. And I think that's really significant. I don't know what other reason there was given that he didn't like it. But what happened ever since then, since he was elected, was that they said they were going to go ahead and this is important. This is not politics just for sake of politics. It's very important for the health and the future of Wolfspeed. Because Wolfspeed used to be a different company. They made LED lights. And ever since they switched over to chip manufacturing, because they supposedly have like the best... I don't know. I forget what it even is. Silicon something or other production. They have lost like 90 some odd % of their value. And they had started building a facility, and it cost quite a bit of money. They built one in North Carolina. There was another one, I think, somewhere else like New York or something. But anyways, the CHIPS Act was going to give them some of that money back. But really, like, it's just complete and total like mess. I mean, in some ways, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot or 20-foot pole, Like, I wouldn't want to get anywhere near this in some circumstances, but if they were able to deliver on certain promises and if they're able to recover in certain ways, I think there's a very good possibility this could have a squeeze moment and be potentially like a pretty big winner. So the alert that just went off was more or less just for my own kind of, I was waiting for it to come back down kind of thing. And I think that with this reaction, it could come as low as 75 cents and still be fairly, I don't know, active, I suppose is the right word. But I'm imagining right now that there's a possibility of kind of like an inversion movement. Again, I'm not expecting something huge necessarily, but I'm expecting something pretty good. So, why am I not talking as much about AMC, right? Why not talk about AMC and get the views in here, right? Even just mentioning AMC, it's like people start coming in, they want to hear about it. Well, I already sort of expressed my disinterest in continuing to stream for the sake of AMC and GME only. I do think that, and I've already given my opinion on this, that there's going to be a pretty massive move incoming over the next months going into 2026, especially. But beyond that, I'm really not looking to continue with streaming for AMC and GME specifically. So what that means is that by default, this is kind of like what they call like a lame duck, right? When you have somebody who's in office who can't get anything done and they're just kind of chilling out until their time is up. In some ways, that might be me for a brief moment as things kind of progress and move forward. It may feel like that at times where I'm not really getting a lot done or something like that. But I genuinely think that the better path for me right now is going to be to pursue what I've got on the title, which is the 15-week challenge. Now, I keep adjusting it, but the main reason I'm adjusting it is because I want it to be accessible and realistic. It started with this idea of like making 15 perfect trades. Like if you have 100% trades, that you could essentially go from $50 to $1 million in just 15 trades. That's true. It's just math. Now, I'm not talking about taxes, but it was like 1.6 million or something like that. You're going to probably give up the last 600,000. I don't even know how much you would have to give up, but you have to give up a lot for taxes. So you would still probably be above $1 million, but I never did that math. So just so you know, it's a very like surface level math equation. It's just 15 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and you do that, or 50, excuse me, times 2 times 2 times. You do that 15 times. Any of that would be a good way to increase your money, but the thing is that like 50% gains is quite a lot. 60% gains is quite a lot. 100% is more like one-off events usually, unless you're trading in options contracts and you're doing a lot of high volatility options contracts with a lot of potential swing. It's very difficult in the market to find 100% moves. And then to find those kind of moves with good stop losses in place means that you're going to be entering a lot of trades and you're probably going to exit more trades than you actually finish based on like a tight stop loss schedule if you're trying to avoid losses. So I changed the formula and I said, 100% each trade is very difficult. And I think that would be extremely challenging. You could do it if you're very, 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 very patient and you only take a trade when you have a very high probability or you believe that you have a very high probability. And that way you kind of save yourself the trouble of kind of entering and exiting and just kind of wasting and whittling away an account. You have to really commit to a trade. You have to have a really solid setup. You have to have a really good trading setup. It is possible. But, if you're only trading once a month, that could take you 15 months. If you were trading once a year, it could be 15 years. Most people would be pretty happy over the course of 15 years to have saved up $1.6 million for like a retirement. I don't know if this doesn't go as far as it used to, but it's still like a decent chunk. And most of us, if you're working a 9 to 5, you're not going to make that much saving for retirement in 10 years or 15 years. You're going to make a very small portion of that usually. Through like an employer savings plan or something like that. So instead, the goal here, I decided to change it to a weekly challenge. What if you just double the amount that you have each week and then you separate that into trades that are more manageable? I already did all of this math on a previous stream. I'm not trying to like redo all the math for you. That would be really boring. But what I did find is that was actually far more manageable. It wasn't even that difficult to do. in theory, right? Now, in practice, you have to have your own set of rules and you have to kind of abide by them. You can't just, be willy-nilly and just hope for the best. You have to be able to engage in certain kinds of trades systematically, and that prevents you from being stagnant. So if you're going to do like a weekly challenge, let's just say, for example, and it could be every 2 weeks, doesn't really matter. You insert the time frame. Then instead of it being about I need to make these huge trades, it's really I just need to systematically trade a certain way in order to achieve that goal. And that breaks it down into something a lot simpler. And what we found was that you actually don't need to do that much. You need a 60-40 win-loss ratio, which is totally possible if you're using really even like the simplest of indicators. Like you can do that with a 6-minute chart. The more challenging on a RSI, for example, like I've done that before, the more challenging aspect to that win ratio is that the percentage wins have to be a decent bit higher. So in order to kind of minimize the amount of trades and not have to overtrade during the week, and we figured out with like T1 settlement dates where it's settling like the next day, you could maybe get away with, like let's say you started with $200 and you're only doing $50 per trade, you could get away with trading like 8 to 10 times per week. And if as long as you're making those good trades, and you could miss one, and that could screw up the whole thing, I guess. You could certainly miss one. But as long as you're making good trades, then there's a potential there for just 8 to 10 trades per week at 15 to 20% with like, I think we did like 3 to 6% stop loss. You can actually achieve 100% per week as long as you hit that metric. So then the challenge is like, well, that's all great. It sounds really easy, but how do I do it? And that's the execution. And one of the biggest problems of that with that method is the frequency of trades, because you would basically have to make 1 to 2 trades per day. You'd have to be comfortable as a day trader, and that means that you have to have 1 to 2 good setups per day. Now, you could use the same setup over and over again. I actually did that this week with Apple, because Apple had repeated trade opportunities, and I traded right here. This was a 100% trade from August 29th, right? Contracts, but this again is options. This is not shares, right? So there's a difference. That's another big question mark, right? Whether you have just shares only versus options. But I mean, this was a really easy trade. I traded from August 7th through the 8th and then into the Monday, and I basically had over 100% gain on like 10 contracts. Now, I actually said 5 here, but I had 10. That was a super easy trade. It broke out of a macro channel, and then it had a big pop, and they just exploded. Then I traded again yesterday into today. I bought yesterday after it backed up here, same deal, and it popped again today, another 30-40%. It might surprise you to know, like, I didn't actually achieve my goals because I wasn't trading with the entirety of like a starting value. So I had decided I would just start with 500 and see what I could get out of it. I'm only at like 350 right now, something like that. And I was sharing that in the Discord group. So I went pretty close to that 100% gain for a week. But I've got like 1.5 more days. And if I didn't get another $150, then I wouldn't make my goal. I'm not so concerned about that, though. I think that's a bit of a difficult ask anyways for anybody. It's really more about milestones and like hitting that 100% and having that mentality like, okay, now we're going to try it again, right? And you're just doing the same thing. It's scarier because you got more money involved, but really it's the same exact thing. You just you got to find the right trades, right? If you can find a trade like this, you can do it. It's that simple. And all you have to do is find one of these per week, technically, and you'd be okay if you're willing to go 100%. I wasn't willing to go 100%, so I have to do more than one. I'm going to end up doing like 5 or 6 trades or something, and hopefully I can get it. I don't know, but I got to do it today and tomorrow. So those are setups that, yeah, like you have to be willing to kind of say like, this is a good setup, but unless it goes or unless it's moving, I can't use it. which requires a screening method. You can't just sit on one or two tickers and hope for the best all the time. Now, you could sometimes do that. When you're trading something like an Apple or whatever, certainly like if you're doing a cheaper options contract, and by the way, these were really cheap. These are $110 per contract. So if you're wondering like, well, I can't trade that, it's too much, it's Apple. No, like the contracts I got were for August 29th, which are very short dated, but the 250 strike, I got like $100 per 5 contracts. So I did it twice. I mean, like that's nothing. That's nothing. In the grand scheme of things, that's not a lot. So if you're starting with a really low amount and you think it's insurmountable, like it wouldn't have mattered if I got 1 contract or if I got 5. Like they were only $20 a piece. You still would have doubled your money. If you just bought one $20 contract right here, it would have gone up to $40 and you would have sold and you would have been done. You would have achieved that 100% goal. So my point being is that percentages are just percentages. You can start it anytime you want. You can end it anytime you want, I guess, wherever you're comfortable. But like the good thing about this goal mentality is that every single week that you come in, if I'm doing something like this and I have one of these posted per that week and I'm looking at those things, it really doesn't matter when you start. Like that's the good news about it. That's just the goal. Maybe you'll hit it in a week. Maybe it'll take 2 weeks. Maybe it'll take a month. It doesn't really matter. It's just however you do it. The point is you want to track your progress and make sure you're consistent with it and making good trades. Very few people will do this because like availability. So a lot of people don't want to do it because they don't want to day trade. I get that. B, like they can't do it because they can't day trade. There's other reasons, like with your broker or whatever. They won't do it because they don't have the patience to wait for the setups. They won't do it because they really don't care to day trade. They just want to get out of AMC or GME. They just want to get out of this trade, move on to the next. They do not want to make this like a living. I am not in that boat. I am in a boat where I want to make this work. If I can't make it work after years of like practicing, right, which I've done a lot of charting and practicing charting, if I can't make it work now, like it's just not going to happen, right? It's just not going to happen. And like what better way to do it than to try basically with a fairly simple, straightforward method. So a lot of the times, like this stuff is going to start nowhere, and sometimes it goes nowhere. We did this, and this is just a disclaimer since this is the first time I'm really kind of starting something like this second or third video I've made. We did something similar to this in our previous trading group where we talked about going from like $200 up to like $100,000. And we were talking about how like that seemed easy enough, because of math and all this other junk. But then the buy-in was really bad. Like we were trying to share setups as best we could. And I don't think that a lot of people really abided by stop losses. I think there was a lot of wishy-washy type mentality to it. And frankly, like it went to like total loss kind of stuff because we were so concerned about making those first few trades really huge that we were forgetting like the most basic things, which is like, look, if you scratch, you scratch, but at least you didn't lose anything. You can just try again. You're not losing a lot, or you're losing a couple bucks because of commission fees or something stupid or whatever it is. Fine. You can replace a couple dollars. You can't easily replace $200 if that's your starting value and that's all you have. You have to wait and then start again, right? That's probably going to happen to some people because there's going to be people who will want to do something like this, and then you're going to go in and then you're going to lose it all, or you're going to have a losing streak and get into a negative cycle. So one of the benefits of breaking into smaller trades that are more manageable, like 10% type trades, is that you can easily mitigate losses for one, if you're not going all in, and then B, you can see if you have a losing pattern that's not working and you're not trading the right setups. So, point in case, I'll share a losing setup that was a winning setup. So that was the winning setup this week, was like, this was a really easy trade. I made it over the course of 2 days. And I didn't double my money, but I got pretty darn close in the course of a couple days with very low buy-in. But here's another example of one that, by all means, this looks like the perfect trading setup, but it did not work. Okay. And this is just another example of the difficulty of stuff like this, is that you may have even the greatest of trading setups, but if you don't get the right thing, it's not working out, right? So in this setup, you might be looking at it now like, oh, what's it going to happen? I'm not sure yet. I think on the big picture, it could probably come back down pretty far. I mean, it did come back down and test the wedge top, in my opinion. I do think it could come all the way back down to 325 Tesla. But here's this setup that I had on the chart. And lest you think that I'm like making stuff up, I was like talking yesterday about this with Mr. Momo in the trading group. And I went to share this setup with him. I said, look, this is a pretty common setup in the market. You do see this quite a bit, quite often. There's plenty of people out there that have probably done videos and junk on it. I used to use a setup like this when I day traded a while back, but even more so now, like I kind of know what to look for more than I perhaps did at one point because of all the practice that I've done with wave analysis. I have an idea in my head of like what to expect. This is what I put on the chart. So again, lest you think I'm kind of like making stuff up. So what we had yesterday was on Tesla, there was this really abnormally high level sell-off, like extreme volume, right, for this backup. But I was expecting on the big picture a backup to retest the bigger creek. And then I'm like, I'm very doubtful because this is still in a macro uptrend at this point. Like it just broke out of a huge wedge. And unless it completely reverses, I'm pretty doubtful that this is just going to slide and just keep going. So at this point, I'm like, look, I'm gonna take a look at this, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just do a basic retracement play. And so when this dropped down in the morning, this is like before 11 o'clock my time, I just dropped a line, and then I started doing a fib down to where I thought the support was. It ended up dipping below the support like a smidge, so I had to change this number. I think at one point, I don't remember exactly when I did it, because I think this isn't even the end. It goes down again, but I don't think it ever made a lower low. So I can show you this as it progresses, but I'm like, all right, it's got a 50% retrace back up to 339, 340, which is the level that it dropped off of back here in extended hours. There was a support at 340. The 618 is 341. This is a really straightforward setup to me. You have a positive upside trend with this big corrective move, but it's got a retracement, which isn't even like a full 100% retracement, right? It's still got a retracement here that goes up and retests what I would call like a hook line, right, in extended hours. And I'm thinking to myself, there's almost no circumstance unless it has this like head fake here and drops low again. There's really no circumstance where this doesn't come back up. Like, I'm not saying it's guaranteed. That's never a thing in the market, but it's like very, very high probability play, like 80 to 90% chance. This is probably going to come back up. So I'm looking at it and I just start crafting the next wave. And what I had it top off, and it creates essentially like a triple top right here, trying to make an advancement, but it can't do it. And then you can see it drops down again, and there's a strength test. So it had broke across. During that push-up, it broke across the main downtrend, so it exited the downtrend. This was like the 6-minute chart. Then it creates a top, and it goes down for a strength test. It tries again. This time it's now got a new creek that's like wider. It's going across, and I'm like, all right, well, this is pretty easy. If it breaks out of the top, this trend is reversed. The volume's dropping. Like all the pieces are here, right? The puzzle is set. Should be fairly easy to follow this as it goes. This is a little bit later on like a 15-minute chart or something. This is a 6-minute. The other one must have been like a 3-minute. Yeah, this is a 3-minute. This is a little later. It tried again and it dropped low. So I'm waiting for another strength test. I'm like, this is what's going to happen. It's either going to break out here, quickly go back, retest that creek, and then advance, or it's going to hook and just drop, in which case I'm out of the trade. So at this point, I'm like, all right, I'll just set a stop loss. I'll buy in here. I bought a 7-cent contract, and then I let it go. And I was like, what's going to happen, right? And the rest of the day, I don't even know if I have it charted again. Yeah. So it does this breakout. It does a little back test. This is a 6-minute again. It's pretty fast. It goes right back up. There's the 60% target. It's perfect. It's a perfect play. It's as simplest as it can be. Now, today, early in the morning, it pops back up really, really high. I probably could have exited this morning first thing. I didn't do that, which is, I'm kind of kicking myself. I'm like, I could have probably gotten out first thing. I'm not sure what's going to happen just yet. I haven't really come back to it. I'm looking at, again, like, well, there's definitely a possibility we come down again here. If this is, a secondary distribution right there at like 344, I think it'll probably try to come down lower. But I'm actually still overall kind of bullish on it because it's still broken out of that main wedge. It's in a breakout model. It's just chopping. So we'll see. I'm not overly bearish just because this came up and made a high. I think it really just depends on what happens right here. So I'm waiting on it. I'm not super worried. But at the same time, what happened yesterday with that trade? Well, here's the problem. Here's where I got... This is what didn't happen. So I had a sell region from like 50 to the 618. Would have been a great sell region. That was right here. Again, I'm going to just mark it off. And under normal circumstances, if I had gotten the right contract, I think this would have moved pretty far. This was only like a 1.5 to 2% move. This is not a humongous move. This is Tesla we're talking about. Moving a few dollars is not a huge percentage. But it was probable that if I had gotten the right contract, that could have made a pretty big dent, pretty big impact, because it's a big swing. I mean, the overall picture here is that it moved about as far as this previous move did. It's on a little bit more weakness for sure, but I was like, why not? It should be a decent move. It's off the support, I think, so why not? Well, you can kind of see where this is going. I got a contract for 7 cents. By the close yesterday, before today opened, it hadn't moved. It had actually gone down. It dropped, so it was going inversely. It had dropped to like 6% or 6 cents right here. So I had basically lost money on this upside because the contract that I got just wasn't, I think it wasn't short dated enough. And I think that because of the weakness, people were like, no, we don't see value in this, yada, yada, yada. And there's a lot of other reasons with options. You get into the Greeks and talk about what was going on behind the scenes. But I didn't pick a good contract. So that's a big part of this idea of like screening as well. So just to say like, hey man, I made 100% here is super easy. Well, yeah. And this was not even that different of a move, but significantly different here to here because I made nothing on it. On like basically the same kind of percentage move, I got no return. It's a learning opportunity, right? You take that and you say, all right, well, what would have moved and can I find out? I don't know yet. I want to go back and see if I can find what other contracts did during this time and chart them out, which you can do. It depends on your brokerage. Mine, Fidelity, you have to go through their trading platform and then you have to search up the contract by title. You can also do it by going to the option screener and then copying that or charting it from that. I think there's a link. You can chart it from that. So I'm not sure if there's a better way to do it, but that's how I'd have to do it. And I'd have to go in and kind of do it individually. You can't just see like, here's all the contracts and what they did. So I'm looking at it like, all right, well, on the big picture, did this still kind of do what I wanted it to do? Yeah, kind of. I don't really like the up thrust here with the immediate new low. That looks weak. But Is it jumping creeks? Is it back testing creeks? Yeah, it is so far. And then I'm just going to sort of sit on it and wait. I don't like that it lost money, but there's nothing I can do about that. Now, the good news is, in terms of like now, right? I can't control the price. The good news is the stop loss wasn't even triggered because I didn't put that much money into it. I didn't really stand to lose more than, I think I put like $70 or something. So I really only got like 10 contracts at 7 cents, right? So, I mean, if you sell at 50 cents, or excuse me, 5 cents, then you're going to lose $20. But that's not like the end of the world, right? When you're up 350 on your goal for the week, losing 20 is a bummer, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. So putting it into perspective, this was a much smaller play with a lot more leeway for error, which is what happened. So these are things that I'm like, okay, well, how do I share this information with people, right? And somebody in the Discord said, well, so what should we do? We should just copy your trades or something like that. And I'm like, no, probably not a good idea because there's too many variables there. You may not even be able to trade options. So if I'm doing an options trade, you're looking at it like, well, I can't touch that. Great. That doesn't help you. B, entry and exit's very tricky. Like the way that I had this set up, it was correct. I gave everything that I needed to give for that entry and exit position. This was the trade here, and it was successful. However, even still, like I didn't post at the time, like what was I getting? I think I posted like maybe what I was getting after I got it, but it's like that wasn't ultimately like beneficial, right? So like anybody could have traded that setup, but they could have traded it in a number of different ways. And then in addition to that, I don't know what your capital situation is. You may have already done like 3 trades and you're waiting on things to settle. So what happens if I'm finished and you're not, for the weekly thing? That doesn't really work. So there's all kinds of problems with this idea that people have about copying trades. Also, a problem is like, what if you're copying somebody who ends up, having like a losing strategy consistently? You can't easily see that from the get-go. It takes time. So for us to kind of like work through those things, I think is really, really important. We're not really there yet. I do want to get it started. I had 10 or so people that are interested in trying to do it, that are interested in doing it. I'm all for it. There's got to be a systematic way to do that. I think this is probably one of the easiest things to do. They have on a lot of these like a stop loss, entry, exit kind of thing, but that's pretty much all you need is like entry, stop loss, exit, 3 lines, why you would want to do the setup, done. That's something I'm comfortable sharing. Whether or not people trade that, I don't know. How you trade it, I think that should be up to you. If you're somebody that can only do shares, this wouldn't have been a good pick for week one, right? It's expensive. It didn't really go that far. If you're doing options, it wouldn't have been good to copy me because I didn't pick the right options contract. And that's my own fault. Nobody else's, But you may have picked something that did work, and I just didn't. So there's a lot of like little tiny things that you could kind of go through and say, well, this is this and this is that and yada yada. It looks like it's going to drop through here. It's trying really hard to hold on, but that's like the anchor of everything right there right now. So the goal is for you not to do the work, for us just collectively identify windows of opportunity. Correct. And that has to be timely. So it gets to a point of contradiction to the whole methodology if I'm only sharing stuff like after the fact, right? Like this had to be done like when I did it, first thing in the morning. And then you'd have to be in the right place at the right time to be able to execute on that trade and to move forward, period. So yeah, in some ways, like I could do some of the work if I'm doing the screening and I'm sharing that information, but that's going to be that's going to require me and my own sort of self-discipline to like go through that process and make sure that I'm sharing that in a way that is beneficial, not after the fact. This is just to show you an example. This is not a trade setup right now. Like I'm literally just talking about the last few days. That's not a trade setup. That's already happened. So one of the things that I've heard people complain about when they talk about these YouTube gurus who do the trading programs and stuff is a lot of times they're not doing it live. Some of them do. I think Wrench Capital got like a prop firm thing, and I think he's doing it live. And I believe he's been doing that for a while. He gets several hundred viewers every day, like 1,000 viewers every day or something. I don't know exactly what he's doing. I haven't watched one in a while, but like I've seen other people who only seem to show stuff after the fact. Well, yeah, you run the risk of a lot of legal implications, I suppose, when you do stuff live, because you know you can't tell people to buy and sell live. That's not legal. You can't do that. If you're not a financial advisor, you shouldn't be doing that either. But you also can't like expect that to work either all the time. So this is one of the things where I think the Discord group is going to be like the primary source of information. It can't be these like streams. These are great. Maybe I'll do them in the mornings, like first thing, but they can't be just to kind of talk through the setups, but they can't be, it's just not going to work because there's going to be times where like the setup comes out of nowhere or it's like really abrupt. I'm not going to just suddenly jump on and then expect people to be like, well, you gotta be there or else. I mean, yeah, that's trading, you know, you're either in it or you're not. But rather to kind of continually provide good setups, this should enable people to be like, all right, I can do this. Like if it's a similar setup, I can do something similar. If I find the right tickers, I can do something similar. And if we have the right tickers to kind of watch, we can probably see a lot of these things happening in real time before we actually, you know, miss it. So yeah. And the screening is the most boring thing. ADBE. Is that Adobe? That's a good one. The screening thing is probably the most boring of all the things. So like what I wanted to do today, and I will have to definitely stop talking about this stuff and start talking about the screening, was really start looking at the screeners because they have some for different platforms that do different things. I've really, like I said, largely never done screening beyond. So here's what I don't like to do. I'll just be honest with you. I don't really like when people tell me like, here's a ticker, you should do this. And I'm like, well, I don't know anything about that ticker. I don't really like trading it. Well, but that's what's necessary in some ways. If you don't have a bread and butter ticker to go back to and trade consistently, and I think some of the bigger stocks with options, you can do that. Like your Apples and Teslas and stuff, you can usually find pretty short-dated options. So if you see a good setup, you can find a short-dated option for really cheap and trade that setup. That's a possibility, and that's a large cap stock, right? Those are big ones, huge ones. You can do that with any stock, Walmart, you name it, Netflix, they're kind of right here on the list. Palantir, pick one, right? Sure. But if you're trying to trade, like only stocks, then daily you're going to have to kind of come in here and look at what's up pre-market. Why is it up? Is there news? Does it have the possibility of a flag to continue because you probably already missed part of the rule? Like I'm looking right now and I'm like, here's a bunch that are change of 30% and above. I mean, these are huge, right? These are gigantic change percentages. Massive. But not all of these are going to be a good setup because some of them you're just chasing, right? They're already done. They're already broke out. These are things that like we could probably do pretty easily. You know, we could look at drops and do reactions. Like what's a negative percentage change? Why did this drop 100%? Well, there's no volume. So these are the screening tools that we want to use to try to kind of find some good picks. So one of the things that I've been thinking about is market cap, and I think a lot of these will probably be beyond small caps, middlers. Let's do kind of middle small cap. That should be fairly. See, these are this actually narrowed it down really fast. So what's a small cap that's dropped more than 30% for whatever reason in a day? These probably have bad news, right? That dropped them. PHCI, who knows? I don't know what that is. So this is down 30%. Look at that, geez. This is interesting though, because immediately I can look at this and say, yeah, this thing ran 800%, this past year. It probably does need to drop. There's something wrong with it. And this is also a really ugly chart, so I don't know if I'd touch it. But these are things that you can, I'm obviously picking like extreme outliers, right? Let's do 30% and above. 400%, Roy. Jeez. What's going on there? Don't know. This is a 1 hour chart though. Why does it look like it's all broken up? I don't know. It says 1 hour, but it looks really bad. This is like daily. Who knows? Some weird ticker thing. Anyways, you get the idea. So what we can do is we can find a way to upcoming earnings dates, those kinds of things, analyst ratings, sectors, EPS. I don't know about that beta idea. Revenue growth, PEG, price. This is a good one. 10 and below, not quite penny stocks. Let's do 20% and above with this market cap. And this gives us like a window of some that are running that are not super, super, super small. Volume, really low, $100 volume, that's nothing. Let's do the higher volume, TLRY. This one's moving. This looks like a better chart to me. At least there's more data. But like this is the kind of stuff, like if we had come back here and we had seen it was up, you got a flag. You can just trade the flag from here to back to the top. Like that's the trade. To go back and retest the top. This would have taken a few hours today, and it was a, what's the percentage on that? 30%, 25% trade. That's good though, because that's part of the goal is to like make those kind of quick trades that aren't egregious. I wish I could see the, can't see it though. I guess you can put it on the side like that. That's better. Yeah, it's $1. Yeah, bankruptcy companies. Correct. Whether you want to trade over the week or the month, I think is also really significant. Learn its movement, patterns repeat till they don't. Yes. But what I'm saying is that like as a screener option to go back in and look and say that back here, for example, this isn't that long ago. This was Monday. So this is 2 days ago. 2 days ago, this thing was up 20% in pre-market hours, right? And then it just keeps going. And if you had bought in, I don't think you would have gotten the whole move, but if you had bought in down there, you could have gotten a 60% move on a pretty low impact ticker. I mean, you're talking about 70 cents to $1. That doesn't mean that every single time you do this and you pull up one, it's going to be like that situation, right? But you should be able to see pre-market what's moving and like go just check the chart. Like, is it a good place for this to move? I think this was. a good place to gap up. Makes sense. So if it holds the gap, then it just goes and you're good. You're chasing a moment. It's a momentum play, basically, but it's easy enough to do. So how do we do this every single day? Well, you get up early, I think. You give yourself like an hour or so before the market. I'm laughing because I told you guys I'm not a very uppity person in the morning. I'm really bad in the mornings. I just am. I struggle. But these are things that, again, we can kind of go and look at like a middle, I don't know what this is, ALTB. This thing went from like 80 cents to $6. But look at these massive drops, $2 and then all the way back up. I don't know. And that volume, look at that volume. It's garbage. So probably not the best. We're just doing really simple stuff too, by the way. We're not doing anything fancy. I think volume is really important. So I'm a big fan of like higher volume. So I probably wouldn't even look at much of these unless they had good volume on them. This one's really overbought on the hourly. And then you could look back and say, well, is it in a place where it's actually breaking out or we already miss it? Kind of missed it. It did a chop here and then popped, but probably already missed it. So within about 30 seconds, I can kind of tell like this could run into some problems where it stands right now. But if you were to come back, if we did this on like Monday and we saw this, I think you could be like, just keep an eye on it for the week because if it breaks above this level at 256, you have a pretty decent chance of a run there. It's not the best trade, but it's okay. Yeah, and I'm picking out certain ones. I'm not really looking at every little thing. I'm just looking at three things: and change in price and price below a certain amount, below $10. So these have lower entry. These might not have the best options chain. That's always a possibility that their options chain's garbage. This one also is moving really hard. See, I only said 5%, but apparently most of these ones have already been running since Monday. So, we were talking about how August might be this disbursement month. We might start seeing some really big movements. This is starting to make it look like that. These are middle cap companies, but these are making some huge moves this last few days, this early month of August. This is crazy. Again, probably already missed it. Been nice if it was down low in early moves, but still, not wild. Maybe that's going to happen to something like AMC, Yeah, Adobe is one that I keep an eye on. I have Adobe products. More and more, I'm being proved kind of useless. People don't, even in the AMC earnings call, Adam Aaron said they're using image generators, which is frankly just offensive to me, but I'm not going to argue about it. Because I'm like, yeah, all right. So we're just going to like pillage all of art history it's like the Soylent Green of the art world, AI. Just take everything that everyone's ever posted online and grind it into consumable bars for other people. Just no originality, no thought put into it. But Adobe is doing a lot of AI initiatives, so there's that. It's probably going to make them some serious money. They're embracing it. They had me doing a bunch of questionnaires too. I've been like a lifer for Adobe. I've been part of their community or whatever for like 20 years. So they give me like free crap every now and then. It's not very valuable stuff, don't hear me wrong. But it's mostly just for like your opinions. And I was on this like creatives panel and then they just shut it down. Again, probably because of AI. Everything's AI's fault now. Shouldn't have been an artist, Booksy, loser. That's what you get. Oh well. Yeah, I guess so. That's what the world's telling me. Yeah, I don't know. This is a pretty huge company. So this is one that absolutely long term has some serious potential. I'm trying to find like that big cross point. This would be a difficult one to trade long term because the costs associated with that at $300 a share is probably really steep. And I think that if you bought longer options contracts, they're going to be really, really high in terms of price. But if you're willing to kind of go short term, yeah, I could see that. This looks like a retest right here, potentially major one. And it's a double bottom with a bit of a divergence on it. It's a gentle one. This is a daily time frame, so yeah, I made a lower low and the RSI came up, I think. I don't know, it's really close. You don't sound bitter, do you? I mean, there's a lot I could say about AI and the arts, but I don't really want to get into that right now. Yeah, it's a very, very, very minor, like small divergence. So it's there, but it's very subtle. You might even just call it like a standard bullish divergence, not like a strong bullish divergence. But nevertheless, it's there. So I would be looking at on the RSI just the previous trend that was busted, where it's getting kind of stuck right now on that daily. I don't have any EMAs on here either. It's probably worth putting on there. This could be a good setup in the weeks to come, you know, like a really simple one. It's got a gap value up here at 413. So even without options, that's a 20% move just to the gap. There's another gap and another gap and another gap all the way down. I mean, there's just gap after gap after gap here. So these levels are more than likely like Fibonacci retracement levels from the top. I'm not even going to look at them. They probably are. They're probably major supports and resistances. The only reason why I might think Adobe doesn't do as well is because if more people are buying into artificial intelligence for their artistic needs, they may not buy a program like Adobe. They feel like they can just go to ChatGPT and type in a prompt and be called an artist. They're probably not going to invest time and money into something like Adobe. So unless Adobe does something with their cost for their programs, I wonder, you know, they're still doing pretty well, all things considered. But I would wonder what that would do. So anyways, is this a good setup? Yeah, this is a good call out. Yeah, everything kind of whipped around today, which makes sense. I think the market needs a little bit of a pullback. So when we look at these screeners, I'm going to do what I can to narrow this down as much as I possibly can and try to get a good feel for maybe what it is we want to screen for to make good, consistent 20% trades, something like that. And just starting with momentum trading and simple trend analysis is usually best. Like if it's in an uptrend and it has a backup, okay. As if it's not out of the uptrend and it's backing up, it's probably a good buy. Like it's been in a daily uptrend for years and it has a backup for like a couple hours. That's nothing. You know what I mean? So that's a big deal. That's a good entry. With stuff like this has been in a downward motion, so you're really playing contrarian. You're looking at that inversion, and that I like those plays. Those are kind of my favorites, anyways. So I'll look at that kind of stuff, and I'm like, yeah, let's see where everything's going and what the movement is here. So these are the fib fans coming down as well. And then specifically, I like to look for those cat ears. It's right there, I think. This is the valley right there. So there should be some kind of a trend here. There it is. It's pretty fast. That's the motion that I want to see, and then I want to see where that goes. So it's pretty low. This actually peaked out. I think it's between these two. It's right here. So this doesn't have like a humongous short-term. I wouldn't say it has a huge short-term potential just yet. Not yet. It's close though. Yeah, it's really close to being parallel to that. So I think that's probably pretty accurate. Anyways, this is a kind of trade setup where like once you get it, there's not much else to say about it. Like once the setup is kind of apparent, then you just look at whether this is going to be something that's good short or long term. How quickly do you think they can move? Previous upsides that are breakouts, like this is a really good one right here. This upside breakout is a good example for like the speed at which it can move perhaps. This is a course of maybe 20 days, which is a long time. It's more than a week, and it moved about 35%. So it's a slower mover. Do I think that you could capitalize on that, versus something else? Sure. Why not? Over the course of time, I'm sure that would make sense. Have some that are longer positions and others that are shorter positions. That's another thing that's very difficult. I think this is probably going back down to retest that. Another thing that's kind of difficult about this whole trading system that we're talking about, and we're really in the process of developing it. We haven't finished because we really only have like a couple different setups that we've even talked about. There's hundreds of them, right? The other thing that's kind of a problem, I suppose, is that you're playing all short term, and like there's certainly ways to capitalize on both short and long term moves, but how do you decide how that fits into your goal? If you're trying to get 100% every week, but it takes 3 weeks for this trade to work out, and it's going to take that long, and you still want to enter it, okay, well, that's something you have to figure out, right? Like, do you just divide that into the 3 weeks? Do you just decide at the last week that's going to contribute? In which case, you shouldn't count it in your first week. You should count it when it's done. I don't know. That's not really something that needs to be answered by me. I think everybody could kind of do it for themselves and decide what they think is best. If you want to engage in something like this, just be thoughtful, be mindful of that reality, because it's probably going to happen where you're in a couple different trades that don't really work out week to week. You're going to have to decide. So what I wanted to do with mine, I built a spreadsheet today, and I was going to show you guys what that looks like. So this is more about stock screening, like how do you pick those things, but then you also have to think about the setups that you're going to choose to go after, because you can't just go after everything. You got to find like the more consistent ones that you do well with. So like the thing on Tesla today, this was a really easy one that I do pretty well with. Like it's essentially like a hook reaction or an auto reaction back up off the trend. Most of the time it happens, and you just got to wait for the right level and then play it out. Very simple. I've seen it a million times. I'm very comfortable with that. I'm also pretty comfortable with like basic bullish breakouts. That's simple. High volume breakouts that are jumping over a creek. Very easy to identify. Generally have a pretty good grasp on where it's going to go because of wave analysis. So those are my strong suits. Very simple stuff. Like that's it. Like I can play cat ear hooks. I can play general hooks on, in changing trend direction. I can play simple creek breakouts. Easy. But some folks like to do different things. They like to use like EMAs. They like to use RSI or combinations therein. They like to use the MACD indicator, certain time frames. They like to use golden crosses. None of those things are wrong. But I think you can't always necessarily like expect everyone to universally go back to being a sailor. That's right. You can't expect everyone to universally agree on every trading setup. It's not going to happen. So just keep in mind, like I do want everyone to be able to share a trading setup if you feel like it's a good setup, but you have to have like, I guess the right word is proof, a track record with that setup that is sustainable. It can't just be like, oh, I saw this one setup and I haven't tested it. Yeah, okay. That's fine. Just go test it, Do a paper money trading program with it for a few weeks and see if it works. Once you know it works, then it's easier to kind of put your money where your mouth is and put your money where the paper money is and say, all right, well, this is working. I just need to replace it with actual dollar bills, and it's going to work efficiently and effectively. I think that's a very simple, reasonable way to go about things. So yeah, I like this setup. I don't know how I feel about just yet about a rally. To me, this looks like a 2026 move. You know, this is that region right here, and it's going into March. And I think this window probably is pretty huge. I mean, it's a huge window here, but that's like April to April. It's gigantic. But I do think the earliest hits would be potentially in April 2026. That's reasonable considering how this has moved in the past, because in the past, Adobe has run up at a fairly consistent rate. You can see that angle. I'm just eyeballing it. You can see it's basically the same every time. So if it finds a bottom, there's no reason to think that that couldn't happen right here if that's the low, right up into that pocket. But it is a longer term trade. So I mean, within that, you kind of have to find breakout moments where the volatility is going to increase. This looks like a shallow S curve that's trying to advance. Let's see if there's a trade here. I've got a big picture, generalized kind of view. Let's see if there's something else going on. No more humming and hawing about it. Let's take a look. And then we'll get back to doing some stock screening because I want to keep going on that. All right, so there's a pretty wide window here. I mean, this is not even really a trend. This is just a suggested trend of like direction. It did start trying to do this. I mean, I'm just taking that parallel here. It's possible that it's gonna whipsaw and like kind of rocket up here at some point. But for now, I think you just have to kind of look at the basics and suggest this isn't really broken out yet. It looks to me like it's targeting this low for September, which is kind of near that earnings pocket. So I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, and even then, it's like November, you know, we could see a lot of chop in this area. There's not really any way to know. Let's take a look closer here. So the last time it moved up off of the, did something like this. It pushed off the bottom. It ended up dropping back through and making a new low. That's possible. The second time it did the same thing, but it found support above that moving average. Then it really popped. So that was the daily. So I think that's probably going to be the best signal here. So right now it hasn't done anything to find support there. It's just popping. So it needs to come back down. And when it comes back down, it then has to find support off of wherever that is. I'm just kind of estimating it. I have no idea where it's going to be. It could take weeks. It could take no time at all, but like could be tomorrow, right? But it has to come back down, I think, and find that. So I wouldn't mind seeing this advance higher and then come back and like settle here and then come back and hit that moving average. So again, this is a good one maybe for the watch list to see if it comes back. And then I don't know how high it goes here, but not yet. We could see it move quite far. I'm guessing that this is going to retrace, you know, between 30 and 50% from this peak. It's already at the 30%. So maybe at most, this region, the 618 to the 0.5, that's like if it keeps pushing. And then you can take a rough estimation of those and see like, all right, well, that was a pretty good guess. That's a 618 retracement right there and a 0.5. And then if for whatever reason it went really far, that's still pretty close to the same area. So I think it's reasonable to expect that this may be at the bottom of that candle, maybe where that and that is where that support is. So that seems reasonable. That would be a better buy-in zone for this particular guy. So I'm gonna leave it on the chart, but I'm gonna put a alert. Again, I'm not looking at anything but the daily here. It could be a little different on different time frames, but I'm gonna put an alert near the bottom of this candle at like 340. If you want to trade it tomorrow, for example, then probably the daily is going to be helpful to just know, all right, it's still moving, but then we would want to go smaller term and see if there's like been a flag or something on the hourly. Setting up for tomorrow, for example, or going into Friday. Otherwise, I'd just be patient, probably wait, see what happens. Because this to me would be a really good entry if it manages to kind of hold here. But I don't know. That also means it possibly runs like late in the year, which is kind of strange. Like September, later in the year, which is weird. I don't know. A spring typically would come all the way back down to the floor. So if it were a spring, you'd expect it to come back to 332, really low. Or at the very least, this level, again, 342, which is where it was held up right here. Now that move, this move right here is kind of the big one. That could be a potentially big move right there. I think that's the one you really want to capitalize on. Who knows? Maybe that's going into earnings. That one dumped it. That one dumped it. That one dumped it. It's been dumping like a lot on earnings. That dumped it. That made it pop. That dumped. All these big gaps are like earnings gaps. That dumped. That dumped. That popped, but then settled again. Popped. Yeah, these earning moves are really big. So, all right, well, that kind of answers the question. I mean, if it goes down into earnings, I think there's a decent chance it's kind of going to finish up, whether it's going to have a final drop or just pop. I think the alternative, I suppose, here is that, you know, I'm a little off, or it goes faster than expected and it runs up into earnings, which would have to move very quick. That's like going into September. That's more like our AMC GME kind of time frame. So it would have to find its support maybe earlier, by early next week, and then just like take off. The AMC move hasn't happened yet, Chuck. I still think that this possibly comes down again. I'm not positive. To me, it reminds me of what happened here. And I was saying before all this junk happened, I was saying that it's very likely, I don't know if you guys remember, but I drew a chart. I said it's very likely you start seeing this kind of emotion here going into earnings, and you get like a repetition of the same buy up, buy up, buy up going into earnings. So that's what's happened. I don't know. I could go back and look at the chart from July, about a month ago. That's what I was thinking. It was like, it's probably going to be, you're going to start seeing a repetition right here after this big push up. So I never said I thought it was going to necessarily run on earnings. I don't know where that's coming from. That's not me. I don't know, man. It just sounds kind of baity, I guess, like you're trolling. All right. I believe you that you're joking. I'll take your word for it. That's really all I need to say about AMC, though. I don't really want to talk about it because there's nothing to talk about. The setup here has potential for an LPS where it just breaks and goes, but it has to come above this 360 and hold. I cannot stress that enough. And I was saying that like where it stands, you're really just seeing consolidation along the 4-hour moving average, the EMA. Either way, it's going to either reject away from it, and that's going to be your spring where it's basically loading up and then popping, which is better in this kind of a narrowing that because you already got a weakness here. It'd be better for us to like move away from that 4-hour, go from like $3 down to 250s or 240s and get that spring and then just whip around the other way. This is going to put you right back above. And this is just such a simple setup now. Like dipping down into this spring-like territory, even now, like it's not even that far. Dipping down into that spring territory and then doing a reversal around the EMA puts you in a breakout, like a huge, huge, huge breakout zone, like a macro breakout. So I just find it to be very simple. Like it's better to get the liquidity spring. I would rather not go up first because it's going to cause me to question everything. Just by nature of the fact that sometimes when you flush the wrong direction, right, you don't go the right way. The only other flush I see is right here. And to me, I'm like, that's not very much. I mean, you could make an argument, I guess, that that's it. That was the flush. But if it is, it's only going to get you back to this top. That's not enough. That doesn't break out. That's just not enough. So, yeah, I don't know what to tell you. It breaks out of this local one. It does not break out of the big picture, in my opinion. So, I'd much rather not go up just yet. We may see one more pop. We'll see. Maybe Friday or something. Or tomorrow. We are consolidating. We might see another move. I don't know. I'd rather just go ahead and see the drop, but who knows? Last earnings, it was kind of a mediocre earnings. It was okay. Double beat, but overall it was just kind of eh. And it still just kind of advanced over the creek and went. Just took a really long time to do it. It was really slow and choppy. So we'll see. Well, that's pretty easy when there's a operator who owns like 30 to 40 million shares. They can just keep loaning them out at a bit at a time. So until they're ready. I don't know why you wouldn't. If you're buying and averaging and your average is like $3, you can just keep loaning them out and collecting the money. Maybe I'm making it too simple, but to me that seems like really straightforward. Like if I'm Vanguard and I have an average of like $2.50 to $3.50 a share because I bought a bunch early on, which they had like 30 million shares before last May. If I have 30 million shares that are valued at where the price is now, but it popped and it went up to like $6, and I don't want to sell because eventually I'm going to take it up and sell my shares way higher, then all I have to do is like lend out my shares and let the shorts take it down for me, and I can just buy if I want to on the way back down if I want to average down some more, or I can just swap shares and short with them. There's just like there's no risk associated with that if you're in control of the market. If you knew full well that you could lend out shares because you have 30 to 40 million shares and you have them and you're positive on them, they're not losing money, it's equity, it's backed by equity, you don't have margin problems, then you could just sit on those shares, you're just holding them. You could just sit on them knowing that you're going to eventually get out at twice as much. And then you could just lend them out and make money on it. for like years or a year plus, and then take it up later and sell it later. It just seems really straightforward to me. But what do I know? um, I don't know anything about Onco, or I don't remember Onco. I don't remember a lot of these. So Onco had a split. I mean, it's already kind of a yellow flag. That was in June, so it was at least a long time ago. And it split right here. So since then, it's had a walk down. I'm being serious when I say like it's a yellow flag. I don't find splits to be very attractive plays. Like if it's already split, like it went through some kind of a problem with shorts and now they're having to split the stock because they're not meeting certain criteria. Like that doesn't bode well to me. This one looks pretty good though. I mean, it's got on the daily, it's got really strong divergence. I'm not sure how much that's going to be worth in the end, but it looks like it's trying to either hook here or correct. You see that motion? I just don't find this one's at least got some teeth behind it in terms of volume. It looks like in the price, but I have to kind of just take it with a grain of salt. Volume's like so at times. They're propping it up into earnings, which is supposed to be today, which it says approximately, which means they're not really announcing it. It's pretty bad. Let's see here. So this might be a wedge, but it's a weird looking thing to me. I'm like, eh. This setup does not look terrible at a glance until you see that split where it's at. Still, they followed through on the motion. So this had a dip and then ripped back to the top. This does something similar, although it's a little harder to see. There's a dip there, and then it has like a double move up. It is already down quite a bit. It looks like it's made like half the retracement almost already. And then there were gap values. So this looks like it goes to the gap right there. So where is that triangulation like locally? Here. So there's an open, close, close, low. So right there. So maybe 350. By the 25th. It could be sooner than that. These ones don't really, this is not very triangulated, you know. It's kind of early. This one's like right on the nose, but It goes back quite a ways, so who knows? It wasn't on the nose if you use that. It didn't match up. If you use the other trend above it, this little wick, it's really hard to see on the chart. This one's only got one that I probably would use, so it's straightforward enough. So this isn't a bad setup. It's pretty good. That's a daily chart. And then I think if this crosses up, here's what is appealing about this is that's just like a simple reaction that seems to be pretty regular here. But what's better about this chart is that it does have a potential here, although it looks a little like a triangular symmetrical, a right angle bottom. That's often bearish. Whatever. That's just RSI though. I'd say there's a lot less risk going up to like 350 than there is anywhere else. And then what we can do, and again, I don't know how much this would apply. Let's look at a retracement here from that close. 0.5 is at like $4. The 618, this is just basic stuff, is at like 460 from where that split happened. And this kind of runs in line with like the previous bottom. So it's like another back test on that bottom. And this runs in line with that bottom right there. So these are both consistent. That was obviously the 50% one. These are pretty consistent with what I would say are reasonable expectations for like highs. So either a bigger back test on the low there. And then if that's the case, there's usually there's usually like a pretty succinct drop down that matches the early drop down. I don't know if it's because of the shorts covering or what. I've talked about this before. But it tends to be a very simple, like, hey, look, this level to this level kind of thing. That goes to 430, which is right in between the two, which is that bottom. I think it's very possible this hits like $4.30. That would also account for this divergence because the divergence starts there at 430. So it will, if it were to break up and hit that mark, I don't think this breakout results in, so it's like a completion of that divergence is what I'm trying to say. I don't think this breakout results in much else because I can't imagine why you'd go beyond like that 618 retracement here at this particular point in time. Also, I think that when you look at this big picture, this doesn't really have to go all that. Like we don't know exactly when it gets there, but it doesn't have to go all that far on RSI. I think it could probably manage to just get a peak above and get up to near 50. Check something real quick. Yeah, all right. Just enough to kind of hit that mark. So this might be a solid one. This is a bad play because there's little information, my bad. Oh, BLSH. New IPOs, those plays are tough. I don't find them to be consistent enough to trade them, but some people love it because they can rock it, as you're aware. I'm sure. They can move really fast. So I mean, it's definitely a possibility. So this isn't one I would necessarily throw a lot at, but it's a decent enough setup from 3 to 430, and I think you have a possibility of a 44% move here still. So this one looks pretty good. And that halfway point, at least from where we are, is roughly where that gap is. So you'd expect it to be in that bottom. So you'd expect it to be like here and then maybe go again if it breaks out. Can't really tell you where that happens though, but we could use like a simple wave analysis to try to do it by just going from here over. And where the drop is would suggest, this is just purely time-based analysis. Like this is where the drop was. Just Friday the 15th, which is coming up. That would be an upward wave. So well, I mean it's pretty fast, but that doesn't mean anything if this earnings doesn't last or it just keeps delaying. Here it is, the 1 o'clock. Every day at like 110. No, I think it's possibly about to go because this thing, look at the daily. Look at the close on the daily. Notice here on Friday, see that? So between Thursday and Friday, I couldn't tell you exactly what was going on intraday, but it looks like between that time it closed above the moving average. And the same thing here. See how it like got above the moving average and just pops. This is the only place where you find that to be a little less impactful, but even that goes pretty far on that second day. I think this thing's about to move. Same thing here. Like as soon as it crossed up right there on a Thursday, the next day it's like up quite a bit. I mean, that's a 10% move. So I don't know about Wint and PTIX, but this Onco looks solid to me. Really solid. It kind of depends on if this closes above or it drops back below. I mean, if it reversed by the end of the day and came back below here, it's like any of the other situations. You could just be kind of rolling down again. So the day's not over yet. You know, you go like a couple more hours. If this were to drop for whatever reason in the next couple hours, you could have a pretty bleak end of the week and have to sort of reset. But it looks good to me. I'm like pretty interested now in this. Let's take a look. I don't know. I don't know if it definitely goes to 430. It should go up to 350. You've got two trades there that you could sort of anticipate. Yeah, this was probably the better buy-in. It jumped up, ran up. Now it's struggling right here. This is a cat ear structure. Very hard to see sometimes these things. But you can see right there that rejection. And then this is the support. So there was almost like a downward motion here, which is why if it came down again, it probably would come down to this point. And then it'd be ready to go. Maybe even like a move like that. I'm not saying it's symmetrical, but you never know. Could be kind of similar. Yeah. Back up to near 4. So I think for this one, let's see where that is. We've got a creek jump. This is a lot like the Tesla play I just showed you guys earlier in the stream. You've got a creek jump here, advanced. It's already come above that point, so that looks good. That's like right there. So when it first jumped the creek, it had a top, and then it's pushed above that. Hasn't really checked that top yet, and now it's kind of at another potential top right on that cat ear. I'm not seeing the higher high just yet, so there is that as well. I have to look really close. Maybe it's there. So the high here was 298, 298. It might be there. This pushed above 299, but then it's stopping at 298. So it did make a higher high right here. It tried to advance. Very subtle, but it's there. So it tried to advance right here. And now it's like having a little bit of trouble. It's like trying again, but backing up. So your bulls are fighting to kind of get the advancement in. And you can see it's right on the edge. It's probably a bit of a wedge too. So if I had to guess, again, I think this one, even though it's likely about to go, it may need to have one more good like backup. Yeah. So if it pops here and then tomorrow or by the end of the day it drops down, you could probably expect something like this as a retracement, and it may not need to go all the way down past 287. What I'm trying to do is get an idea for like where is the stop loss, right? There's a gap way down here at 266. So it may just be that simple. Look at where that 618 is and the 0.5. We're right. I think we're right about this. So if you want the very best possible entry, you either wait for it break above 302 or you just wait till it comes back to 277. And then there's a potential here that Friday into Monday, this pops. This is also consistent, and it should be, with that breadth down here, which is typically like the poor man's way of doing it, because I think that there's usually like that retracement's about the same, and that's correct. It's the same zone, 279. So like this is probably the best possible buy is like 281, the 50% retracement. That wedge, it's a little messy. I couldn't tell you. I mean, you never know. These things, they could still break out to the upside. They widened it, but then it dropped back in. See how it like pushed up twice, failed, and now it's back inside. So who knows? It really doesn't make a huge difference though either way. Because then I think your reaction would be quite substantial regardless. Let me see where that goes. Yeah. I'm doing a lot of weird boxes and measurings with the boxes, but yeah, so if I had to pick and I was like, somebody said you must pick one, you have to decide what you think is going to do. I think this is more likely, based on everything that we're seeing here, that it goes ahead and makes that dip. But I'd also suggest that like this isn't really a surefire thing regardless, because we don't have really any retests here anyways on the creek, and it may never do that. Some stocks do it and it's logical, and some stocks don't. It's illogical. It doesn't make any sense to me why they don't come back and check it. Usually it's because the operator's got something else in mind that they're trying to accomplish. So yeah, to me, I would be like, sure, if this backed up and then went again Monday, I think it'd be a really strong trade. But who knows? So if you were a really eager beaver, you could like use some money involved in it and maybe not trade everything you have, but set aside like, all right, I'm going to set aside $50 to trade it. I could enter a portion now And then if it breaks out, I'll just buy on the way up. And if it doesn't, it comes back down, then I can get in at a better price down here and average down a bit. But I would suggest that in this case, you're kind of buying right now at a top. Like, it's not really a sure thing. If it holds that level and then were to break above and close here today, that might send it. Because like I said, on the big picture, I think that means that it's above the moving average. Like, so if it went up today and just sat here, you could just gap up tomorrow. You could be like way up here, you know? That's just the way these are. As soon as it crosses up, even on this weird like hooking motion, it's still gapped way up. So, yeah. So I'm not going to make this any more complicated than I already have. I already kind of made it a little bit complex. But I think right now it's a possible buy if you don't mind the little bit of downside possibility. So there's a buy zone here, kind of presently. And then there's a buy zone here, I think, below these levels. That's just what I'm seeing. Like, basically a retracement here would do it, probably do it well. I do wonder about this too, if you could avoid. Maybe there's 3 buy zones potentially. But it's also a play that I think stop loss wise, I don't know if I'd play with fire that much on this one. I think if it went below that 270 level, I'd probably just get out. And then if it came back up, you could buy in again. But I think I wouldn't like that with the way that this is, because the creeks are getting wider, which is fine, but they're still there. So you still have the idea of like, well, where would you go next? Well, you're going to probably drop pretty low to like 250. Probably just going to go back for the gap and try to see if it's the strength test, right? The bigger strength test at play here would be down here. So if you bought in a little early and then it were to keep dropping, there's no point. You could just wait it out, see if you can try again later at like 250 or something. So I would say the stop in this case is pretty shallow. I wouldn't let it go much beyond that floor. Even though there's a gap there, I'm aware of that. I think you would just like reassess. And I would have to come back and look at it. I couldn't tell you. I think there's too many S's in there. Reassess. I think that's right. Assess. I don't know. Do I still think that MPW moves up? Possibly, yeah. I got to be honest, there's a lot of really negative news about it. I think that you have to just kind of consider why that news is there. And one of the things that isn't going very well is the buying market in real estate specifically. And part of that's because during COVID, a lot of people moved. And this is not real estate for real estate's purpose. It's medical properties, right? But during COVID, a lot of people moved to certain states and stuff, and real estate had this overabundance of building, and now they have too many buildings. The supply is too high, and so it's become a buyer's market because things sit on the market forever, and because money's been tight, so people don't want to buy with these expensive homes. So they really inflated the price of homes. I don't know why. I don't know what la la land other people are living in where they say that prices are down, but I've not seen home prices come down. Maybe it's just the market that I'm in, but it's been pretty bad because there's too much supply, but these people bought in, built these properties and they're expensive, and then they're trying to sell them for this high price. It's like, well, nobody wants to buy it for that price, and you have excess supply, so it's pretty easy to. So it's been quite a buyer's market for a while. But the thing about medical properties is that it's medical properties. They had issues because they're self-governed, so they buy based on their board and what the board thinks. That's good and bad. Kind of consolidates opinions and decisions, but they do their own thing. And if they're not doing a good job, then there's not really much you can do about it as a shareholder, just based on the way they do their thing. So you have to, the way their company's set up. So the trust had some problems with tenants. Those tenants got late on payments and other things like that. And eventually they solved one of the biggest problems that they had with the tenants. And then after that, you would have expected their financials to get a lot better. They are projecting like a return to really good financials, but it's like years out. So they're lining up new things, and it's, in my opinion, like it's a recovery play, and it's probably a really good recovery play. In my opinion, it may not be the best options play because options have been really shaky on it and inconsistent. And it, timing wise, it could take a really long time. It's been in a phase B of sorts for a long time. And technically, even though I don't like to think that way, because I like to think about wavelengths and all that stuff, technically a phase B can last almost indefinitely. I mean, it can go on forever. It's just sideways trading. And that's the place where liquidity is most comfortable, and it tends to take a long time to build out. So as a result, I think a lot of people jumped in on this particular ticker. I found it to be very interesting. I found it on my own terms. And then later it started popping up on a lot of these analyst websites. They're doing their analysis about it. And it's mixed. Like, people thought it was going to go early, kind of like I did. And then it turns out it wasn't like the best trade. It's like, well, I mean, it wasn't the best trade if you think it was going to go way back. If you think that it's just kind of meandering along in its phase B, then it's actually not in a bad position. I've got to find this stupid chart here. All my charts are really messy. It's not in a bad position. I still think this, if this is the phase B bottom, this could still have a spring down below 350. And that would have to be accepted. As much as I don't like how it's come all the way up and it didn't have an LPS here, my initial thought was it was probably going to stop at $4 because that's where it entered. So it would make sense to me that this would regain footing there. But there's a ton of little like back tests. One of them at like 393. I mean, if you look at, there's like dozens of little bottoms right here from 390 up to 4. I just think that's really obnoxious because it's not consistent, but that kind of smacks to me of like, that's a really strong potential bottom. But there's also this nature of like, where's the real phase B bottom? It's down here at 350. It's not up here at 4. That would have been a good place for a last point of support. Instead, you have this kind of whipsaw motion, and this certainly gives you a lot of evidence that this thing could go from 630 down to just beneath the floor. I mean, this is like a perfect, as you can get, kind of turnaround right here. And if you just keep looking at it and look at the directional movement there, the 50% down takes you to 347, which is just beneath that previous bottom. So I would not at all be surprised. And I've been saying for a long time, it looks a lot like AMC did. And I still think it looks like that. Yeah, this came up really far, but it still looks a lot like that to me. I'm like, it's the same setup. It's just this would have to come down below this bottom instead of it being near the floor. So I'm not worried. I don't personally like I'm not looking at this every day like, "Oh no, it's done for." I think 350 is definitely on the table, but it has been the whole time. And what's going to cause that to happen? I'm not 1,000% sure, but I think that the catalyst moment would be a drop here because this is again a previous floor that in the past when it's dropped through it, it's gone pretty volatile when it goes through it, but you can see why that would be impactful like that as a floor. Dropping through there could sink you pretty quick. So timing wise, it's kind of like anything else. I can do a wave analysis, but that's about as far as I can take it. I can't really guarantee the timing works out. But you can take a I don't know, like kind of a straightforward approach, look at where it crossed up and see where it crossed down, I guess, through that. It should be soon. It should be by September if it's going to drop. I mean, this is on average. I would go from here to here. So the middle is roughly, that's the wave up, down, up again. So the middle is roughly around May 27th. So in theory, you go to the peak here and then drag your middle to like the May 27th time frame or thereabouts. Should be done, like it should already be down. But I mean, we are seeing like after this peak, like a lot of selling pressure. It's built up quite a bit. And then you can tell right here, this looks like a divergence. It's trying to push down. The RSI came lower and this is still struggling. It's trying to like get back out again. What does that mean? I'm not sure. Part of me thought, and I even drew it over here, part of me thought that this might take longer than expected. Like, what if there's a secondary move and we think it's going to run in September and it does have a pop because it's reacting to this divergence, and there is a divergence there for sure. But what if that divergence doesn't result in a breakout and instead it just goes up high into September? This could be again a quick trade. It might even be a lucrative trade. It's a 27% move. You could have a big pop going into September, and then still come down and get that spring because it hasn't left anything yet. So there's no real like cause for celebration. If it just because it pops from the bottom here at 4 up to 522 doesn't mean it's definitely going to go to the moon. So part of me, I was like, I drew this a little while ago. I thought, well, let's say it did something like that, then it leaves again in January instead. Could it have like a succinct January breakout move? Yeah. So I think there's a decent chance that this has a move going into next year and going up to like $9. It's a huge move if it does that. Make no mistake about it, you're talking about a 200% move, but I may not be right about everything, timing wise. This is just one possibility. There's a secondary one, which is later on. If this capitulates and comes down again, it's just prone to happen. If it drops suddenly and went to like 340, I'd be pretty darn bullish on it. Just from my own experience, I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty bullish. But for now, it's just sort of a mixed bag. There's a lot of question marks. This is a widening. I don't know, man. This whole chart to me has been really, really good since way back here. I really like this. I do. But I'm also patiently wondering what happens at the end. Does it hold up and just go? Does it go ahead and get the drop? It's a little bit like AMC in that regard. It makes me a little nervous too, thinking about that, because AMC went up, not in the same time frame, but it had like a similar motion, and it makes me a little nervous to wonder, is this gonna just break out and go, or are we going to see it kind of stop and try to go to the bottom again? I don't know. Could see something like this where it jumps over the moving average and it comes back. And then this is even lower, the price, but the RSI stays higher up. That wouldn't surprise me. That would be like a real setup for a big move. And then just kind of squeezes going into the next year. I don't know. I like it at $4 though. I guess I'll just put it that way. Like it's a good price right now. It'd be a good price at $3.50. I don't anticipate it's going to keep dropping, but I mean the future is not written, so it's not set in stone. I wouldn't be surprised if it reacted here and came back down again. I'd be annoyed, but I wouldn't be surprised if it has like an early September reaction that doesn't actually go. But yeah, there's a potential very good trade here as well for the trading group that we're doing, because this setup is a pretty low entry and that's a 30% move. And you can see it's right on the cusp of that potentially. This is divergent locally. This is the hourly. It looks like it's about to try to go. You want good setups. We've found a couple already. ONCO looks pretty good to me, and so does MPW. Again, my biggest concern with MPW is that it probably is going to go back and retest. I bet it's this. I bet it's this 476 level. I don't know why I think that's the case, but I don't remember what this is. Why do I even have this on the chart? It's going to be 458 to 476. Like this region right here. So let's see what that percentage is. That's 11, 15, 18%. That's not bad. So we're talking about stock screener type stuff. We're not talking about, obviously we're not using these just older charts, trying to go back and see if we can find new ones that have good setups that are quicker. And you're going to need to do that because not all of these are going to be, every single day this thing's going, that thing's going. Some of them will be, some of them won't. So if I bought into this before it jumped, well, so be it. You could end up with a kind of a cruddy situation. I like that this one was positioned up. This is positioned down. I don't like that this had like a double up thrust through the top. Through that creek. 1, 2. Like it's going to try to distribute. I like this. It looks like the RSI is already trying to come across there. I like the head and shoulder build out down. And then the middle reaction here. think we're right. I think it might be coming up to like 5. Then I don't know. I think it might stop short of greatness. This is shouldering. That's the right shoulder right there. And then you can see like the bottom motion. I don't think it's going to go up past the halfway point though right there. But I think that bottom motion is pretty clear anyways. And it's divergent. Google flush. I'm not super worried about Google. I'm out of like almost everything except for like one call, which is for like October. It needs a backup. It hasn't backed up in a long time, so needed to like chill out for a minute. And then there's another potential low right here. It's like real low, like 383. If you're just using these parallels, it's already kind of done, but more so if it drops again and it goes lower and this RSI stays upright, I think it's a really good buy-in. Because the same thing happened over here. If you look carefully, this is the 1 hour. There's a secondary action down here. So there's early kind of RSI divergence, but then it drops really low, and that RSI stays strong, and then has a big reaction. And that's what you're trying to capitalize on, is stuff like this. That's a 37% move, right? So even more so if this drops again, I don't know if I could advocate early entry on it. I think you'd have to kind of wait. But there's two major entries. One is right here, just jumping the creek. And I suppose you could, at that point, suggest that it's probably better just to wait for the higher high. So it'd be some kind of like a hop here and then go. So that's the first entry. And the second entry is more risk on, which I'm not as big of a fan of. But since this is just shares, and I think even if this dropped again suddenly going into like the end of the week, I wonder if you could get like another low here, like push it down and see that RSI stay built higher. I could see that, but it'd have to be like soon. It couldn't be like way late in the game. And that would be a good place too, I think, just to buy low. So like down here at like 390s. Let me see if there's anything else that's really risky here. I'm trying to figure out where the heck this is going. This looks like a traditional like topping. It didn't go up very high, so I'm curious. I don't know, man. That kind of looks like it grabbed. It looks like it hit that creek. So it may be. I'm sorry. I may have misspoken, thinking it needs to come down again. But I think it's possible that's already done. As it jumped over that. There's only one more. I'm a big fan of this kind of stuff because it lets you see very clearly the RSI. I mean, yeah, right there. So if it comes down again, and this kind of wiggles around the middle at 50, when that moving averages crosses up at 50, I think you've got a really good buy. Maybe not until then, but if you can see it cross up on that 50, I think it's a very, very strong chance. So let me try something real quick. It's kind of late to the game. It's always like when it's selling off. That was like right on the cross up. It popped. This one took a minute. By the time it got to the 50, the move was like done. But in this case, we're talking about it coming down and meeting it at the 50. So if it came back and it did back up while this was coming down, not unlike this, but then it pushed up above, that's different. That's like a change of direction. These things happen like gradually over time. I don't know why that looks right to me. It just does. It's kind of right in between them, isn't it? I guess that makes sense. Wow, look at that 4 hour. See that RSI trend right here just continuing, and then this really looks like a just a very strong attempt to kind of hold on to that right there. It's really close to one or the other. You can see the motion getting near that breaking point right here. Well, I'm thinking that the way this is going, if it does have a backup in the next few days, and on the 4 hour, it probably wouldn't look like much anyways. It would probably just chill out going into like Friday or something, and then it would break out again. But I'm willing to bet at this point that if that were to happen, it did happen slowly, that this would then be a pretty enormous move. This hasn't been overbought on the 4 hour for a while, so for a long while, since like March. So I think it's going to be a pretty substantial push. I don't know what this is. Yeah, it's overdue. It's like pushed up here, consolidated, is trying to hold. So if that holds on, it should have another push. I'm not, again, I can't guarantee anything. That's not the way the market works. But I'm feeling pretty confident that MPW is likely going to have a nice pop. Going into September. Yeah, this has kind of been here, done that kind of stuff. I've seen this before. Yeah, I can't really say it's done with down, but it's still close enough. Makes me wonder. Yeah, I think if it did drop again, it could come as low as 384, but that might just be a way of kind of signifying a future desire to come back down. It's a possibility. So 407 to 384 is a pretty decent buy zone. Let's just say you bought there and it did go down and you averaged down and you were somewhere in the middle at like below $4. By September 2nd, it's at 5. You've made 26% on that move. So yeah, so we're probably speaking of I'm gonna drop this one down to the middle percentage because I think on average it just depends on where you get in. But we'll just kind of use a lower percentage. This is a 15 to 26% move. So this would be a good one for the trading group because it's got the right stuff. The right kind of setup for a trade at pretty low cost. It's not going to give you an immediate return. It's going to take another week, maybe more. It's not like a tomorrow thing, this one. But that's not bad. And if you have a goal, like for example, if you have $200 and you're trying to make some money, this could go a good chunk of the ways, at least in one of the trades that you make. I really can't recommend options on this. Unless you can find a contract for September, and we'd have to look. I don't find it to be very useful because I don't think that they've had a lot of great volume. So unless you can find a September contract with high volume for 5, I'm not really sure, or maybe it could be in the money, but I'm not really sure what you would possibly stand to gain because most of the time they're not trading very well. This is a plenty good shares trade, so entry, and then I think your stop is below. Your stop loss is below below this marker right here, which is like 375 or something like that. Now, if you bought in at 4, that might be a bit high, but it's still much less than so your loss is only 15 cents if you buy in at 4, which is like now, 4.10 or whatever. Maybe it's 20 cents, but you stand to gain almost $1, so 50 cents. So you're talking about a 5 to 2 risk reward ratio, So I mean, if you only get a 50-cent gain, that's not the best. But versus a 20-cent loss, that's not horrible. That's more than 2 to 1, so it's pretty good. Hey, Jason, you gotta chill, man. I see your comments. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just doing other things, so gotta chill. It's okay. It's gonna be all right. ONCO just went up, so it might do it. It might just go for it. Honestly, it looks kind of crappy on the hourly when it looks like it's going to be overbought really soon. So I'm kind of curious about that. It did this over here and it had a pretty nasty spillback and then still moved up. These other ones, I don't know, as soon as it got to the top recently, it's been getting sold, so hard to say. It'd have to be, like I said, a gap up or something to be highly effective, but I was kind of hoping it would pull back first. Yeah. Oh well. Tesla looking like garbage. Can't even hold on to lows it's making. struggling. It's more like a flag. But I suppose the problem being is that it went so high that like it's probably going to drop down low. Back down to this region at like 330s. Real low. If it does that. That's not a good thing after going up. But who knows? These kinds of things are weird because like Tesla is one of those tickers that yeah, it may do that, but it's very possible this is like a widening top. So like it's totally possible this thing just dumps all the way down. But it would not surprise me if this was like a widening top either, which is unusual. That's a weird middle finger, I think, to everybody that invested down here, though. Right there. That S-curve is strange. I say that because I'm wondering about, on this guy, that widening. It's way out there. So I wonder if this was the idea. All right. ONCO came back down. It says 299 on the top of my chart. It says, why does it say that? And then it says 301 here. It's messed up. That's not helpful. Still, if it closes high, I think there's a possibility it just gaps up. Most of these bigger moves seem to have happened on like gap up motions, so there was already like, it wasn't really fully extended, it just popped. Might be a good overnight trade if that's the case. I'm going to make a decision about it in about 10 minutes. Kind of let it go, do its thing right now. Okay. Well, yeah, so this would not surprise me if we come back to this 328 area. I think I've already said it a couple times, a couple different ways, but it seems like that might be what's in view, is just the gap, 329. It's okay. Tesla is not the perfect ticker, but there's a possibility here if it did come back down, and it doesn't have to. I mean, you could break out again and try again. I'm thinking if it did that, I'd be watching 345 because it could just be a delayed distribution effort. Right now, to me, it looks like it's shouldering. So I don't know why it wouldn't try, at least strength test, try to come down. It seems that's where the bears are trying to get it, 331. But if it did come down there, then I'd be watching really carefully like a trend break going into Friday. Could have a really bullish Friday on Tesla. So I think ONCO and MPW are good setups. MPW and ONCO both have possibility of a little bit more down. They may not be done, you know. MPW especially, be careful about this roll if it doesn't jump up and over immediately. This roll down could cost you some time and money if you put too much into it. But it's not a bad setup. I like the setup, is what I'm trying to say. So time is just the bigger question here. And I think long term, you're really looking at this as yeah, sort of like a return to trend. So I would be, again, watching this parallel structure. I plop these on the chart sometimes. These are just trends. There's nothing fancy about it. Not really. You can see right there. It's the same area we're talking about. But I do think what you're looking at is a return to, yeah, it's right there, man. It's right on the dot. I got to figure out if there's a good contract, but I doubt it. This is like pretty straightforward setup. It looks like September 3rd. And I don't think that's going to give you like a perfect contract, but I'm just saying that's where it looks like it goes. So up to about 5 back testing. So I may put some money into a trade here for ONCO. If it holds on a couple more minutes. I'm trying to figure out why it's not updating. Makes me nervous. Chart's not updating. But it looks like there's a lot of volume right there. It looks like it's trying. It just starts sliding, goes the other way. But ONCO looks good. So I think it's a solid enough setup, straightforward enough. I don't think I would put like a ton of money into it necessarily, but it is there. Let me see if there's anything to it. Oh, Onconetics. Funny if I couldn't even trade it. That'd be kind of a bummer. Yeah, this says 299 as well. So I don't know why TradingView is showing like it's already out. 299 is not out. So I'm confused. This ticker price is not updating like it's supposed to. Makes it seem like it's already down here again. Back below the top. Well, in any case, I don't think I'd be in it for more than a week. So see, now I'm not sure. The problem is that if it went back down to 299, it dipped below the trend that was there. You can see it was buying up off of that, just barely. I hate these charts when they're like this. There. So the problem is, like, if this went down to 299 again, then it's actually below. It's possible it's below here. Like, it could have popped up and came right back below. And the actual price is sitting below that, which would be weak. Or I should say weaker. And I don't know. That's just not really where I want it to be. So it's not a huge deal. Or it could be just sitting on that line waiting. It's interesting. It's interesting to change like the view to the line chart and see how different it looks. I just think that's fascinating. Hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna take a trade, but I'm gonna consider doing it again if it goes back to 399. I'm like wondering if it even needs to come down this low, because I think on the bigger picture, if it can make that cross up, I think it might manage to go from here and just start moving. So I'm gonna take a trade, but I'm gonna enter here in part, and I might enter again if it comes down to here. So we'll see what happens. I'm not confident in the assertion that it couldn't come back again. I think it's just kind of a mixed bag. And I think I'm going to do the same thing or similarly with MPW. I think I'm going to enter here, but then if it dumps back, I'll probably just average down for now because I don't think that the loss would be substantial enough to worry about it. Not very much anyways. So that's my opinion. I think a shares only position is fairly low risk. And then I will check and see if there's a it's not going to be a huge gain, you know, if you only put 40 bucks in, you may only get 50 something bucks out, but you're taking what is like a 1 week trade opportunity. You could put more in, you don't have to just do that, but I'm just saying like basic trades here. So and I would have to check the options chain. I'm very doubtful that there's a good options contract for MPW. But let's take a look. Can ONCO go past 430? I don't think so. That was kind of the highest I could see it going. So I'm not a big fan of talking about rockets here. I think you're really looking at a kind of a quick pop and drop. And it's really basically like a back test on that previous bottom, which doesn't even look like from this point of view. I would be more inclined to think that it hits 350 than 430. There's no guarantees, again, that this doesn't just turn down and go south, but I'm going to stop out if it goes low. So set a stop down there. So if it suddenly drops beneath like 270, I'll be done. Just let it be. Not worry about it. Yeah, I don't know about Tesla right here. This one's like messed up. I'm not really want to touch it right this second. Let's take a look. And then I'll check out those other tickers that you asked me about. I do pretty straightforward options trading. There's all kinds of fun options you can do. Setups you can do, I mean. But I'm pretty boring, so. I think MPW is going to get a pop back to 5. I think it needs to go back up and retest 5. And then I'm looking for something short term, but not too short. September 5th is the weekly. I don't really want to go past it. I'm sure it could. It could be like a low, and that would really like stink, but if I did go past it, maybe the 19th, since it's not a weekly. And there's like no volume. Let's see here. There's a bit of volume at the $5 strike for the 19th. That's not bad. There's a huge amount of open interest. There's 12,000 open interest on it. Implied volatility is only at 50%. And then they're only 2 cents a piece. That's a 30-day window. That's a long window. There's a 450 with a decent amount of open interest and volume. Not a great amount, but a decent amount. That 12,000 is a huge one. And then there's 18,000 open interest at $5 for the 15th of August, which is like now. Though I don't know why you would do that. That's a lot of open interest for something that expires in like 2 days. There's no volume. I don't know. I mean, September is pretty safe. If you wanted to do it and try it out, it's cheap enough. But I get concerned about options on this thing. But at least there's some volume. So that $5 call for September 19th. Pretty low probability of success. But that's because it hasn't broken out yet. I think if it breaks out, that changes a lot. So that's the 19th. So the bid is 2 and the ask is 4 cents. I don't know, it's a tough one. But it's the only one that has volume, so, and quite a bit of open interest. Yeah, this is one of those plays that you probably would have to, I can't even see the, I should see if what the theta decay is on that. Hang on. Delta theta ratio, let's see. This is one that I think would be a bit tricky. Theta is really low. It's not bad. I just don't trust these options, that's all. I find them to be very difficult to trade. But it is very cheap, so I mean, if you wanted to do it, it wouldn't be exactly super expensive. Gonna lose like nothing. Hmm. It's Friday the 19th. It's not classified as a weekly, but still Friday. I think it's okay. All right, let me take a look at oh, ONCO is at 311. Must be because I bought. You can't move it that much. How much did you buy? Like, not that much. But it did move up, so. I don't know, guys. It moved up. Yeah, that's funny. Whatever. Yeah, I just bought. I think I just bought it. I bought it for 44 bucks. I didn't buy a lot. I'm trading really low values right now. I'm just trying to get the last bit of this 500 bucks left. So I'm not really worried. But we're not there yet, so we'll see. My UNH calls are up about 50 bucks. I might just let those go. That would be very close to competing. Actually, they're up more than that. They're up at up 70 right now. United Healthcare is a mess, but the ticker itself and Starbucks, man, I need to trade Starbucks more. Look at that garbage. Starbucks is easy to trade. It has massive swings. Anyways. Yeah, UNH just keeps running. I bought October 350s, so I mean, there's a lot of time on them. I don't have to do anything with it. What I might do is wait and see if it gets overbought, and it gets close to it. Sometimes it backs up. And this, to me, looks overextended. There's two gaps. But it jumped the creek. It's just kind of moving now. I think it's going to come back down one more time, maybe before in August, and then pop again. I'd be very surprised if this just like straight up rockets and just keeps going. I'd be genuinely surprised. I think that would be quite odd. Yeah. I think it's gonna stop sooner than later. Probably like right there, top of that gap. And then it's gonna take some time. I think it's gonna take some time to walk up over here. More than likely. I might just exit it because it's up 50%. I don't see why not. I don't really want to hold it that long anyways. I just kind of like make some money on it and move on. And then I'll look at re-entering maybe later if it comes back again. This is like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 type deal. And I wonder if it gets up to that 3 here, if it can make it over that top. It's probably going to have to come back and retest something. And this is a long move. I don't think it's a short-term move. So another thing I'm looking at here is like, where does it go when it comes back to retest? That gap is right off that floor. So I do wonder if it's going to come back down as low as 250. Chop right here. I've got it kind of just going. And maybe doing something later. But we could see it like kind of stop and then come back this way. And come back to like the 250 region here. And then break out later. So there's just a ton of different ways that could go. So I'm going to go ahead and like strike while the iron's hot and just get this done with. Because I want to make my goals, you know. All right, I got it filled. I want to hit my goals. And my goal this week was 100%, so I'm going to hit it. If I hit that 100% and I can do it in a week, I'll just let the past be the past. Then I'm going to do that and not worry about, like, let the trade be done, not worry about every step of the way here what happens. Let's see if I can get that. Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge move, but I traded it from down here at like 250 to like 270. So I don't think that's a bad trade. It wasn't too expensive. So this is done now. Almost there. If Tesla hadn't screwed me over, I'd probably be in good shape because I'm at 405 and I started at with 500. Yeah, MP Materials is like booming a lot, so you gotta like that one if you're in it because they had a really nice beat, and I think with everything going on with China and rare materials, it's probably going to do pretty well, I would imagine. This is weird. I don't know what you're doing, Tesla. This is so maybe it's just backing up and doing like a shallow S curve right here. I thought it was gonna be like a full S curve. Maybe that's a shallow S curve. It is a double top motion. If that breaks above the highs here, it's probably just going to go. I hate to do that, as I just said I thought it might come down. It's not there yet, but if it breaks above that high right there, I think Tesla could just go again. Right there. 341. The thing is that after it makes this low, if it goes back up and it pumps to a new high here, then you just need to make a higher low, and it's a cross up. It's a creek cross. So like if that were to occur, and we can get rid of this now. Oh, this is old news. But if that were to occur, yeah, it could just rally again. I mean, it's only likely going to go back up to 350s just to start, like right here, 346, I mean, just to start, but still. Then you can kind of like go back, it's going back to the top again. Then you can reevaluate and say, oh, it may have a cat-ear kind of thing. That you could see why, that's a hook. But if that happened, then yeah, maybe it comes back down. Who knows? That's where we don't know yet. I would prefer if it doesn't do that because I think it'd be a lot stronger if it just dropped and went ahead and hit a low. I think on the bigger picture, it'd be a bit stronger. But I'm not going to tell it what to do either. So anyways, that'd be a good one to watch today. But yeah, all right. So I'm out of UNH now. I'm going to have to look at that. Pretty much nobody traded that with me because I was doing it on my own time. Yeah, Google, that's fine. I'm happy with that. Look at that wick. Jeez Louise. I actually thought this was going to come down to this level earlier. It just didn't do it. So I didn't know why it didn't come down sooner. It just didn't. I mean, you can see it on my chart. I don't know. That looks fine. I don't know what's going to happen if it's going to keep dropping, but that's a huge wick on the hourly. Goodness gracious. That whole candle was like gobbled back up to the top. It went from 198 all the way back up to 203. What a mess. Yeah, that was like intraday too. Just stop loss hunt. And then we'll see if that's what it looks like to me. just dump it till it hits the stop losses. That's where the trend is. You can see right there. So last time it went below that mark here and dipped below. Like I thought that was going to happen over here. Last time it did that, it went really far. So we'll see. I was watching it thinking that this was going to come up to a particular place on that. And it still hasn't hit it. So I have an alert set at 75 on the 4-hour RSI. Because I went back and looked, and during big peak run-ups, it never really stops till it hits that higher mark. So I was waiting and it just never got there. You can see this. I think I said yesterday, I was like, oh, I'm about to get out because it popped up and I thought, well, it's going to hit it, but it just never hit it. What if it doesn't hit it? Oh, well. It's one contract. It's not the end of the world, but I was like, yeah, I think it's going to hit that. Now it just looks like an M cross, like a 1-2 and then a 1-2 with the deeper backup. So if this holds even remotely above anywhere in this region, I think it's possible it could go back up again. Albeit the whole move looks a lot weaker than it did in the beginning. And I still think this looks like a rising top. So even if it goes up again, I'm like, that's it, you know. I'd be lucky if it holds on and pushes up again. I'm just not thinking it's going to do it till it hits that peak. That's just my opinion. I think it's going to get there. I do. I don't know if that's logical, but I think it's going to make that little pop right here. And then it's going to probably be done. That's my guess. At least for now. This is already like turning down, and this is like really weak with the volume. So I would not be surprised. I won't say this far. This looks like forever, but I wouldn't be surprised then if it came back to like 196, drag down through here, something like this. But who knows? Maybe it's just doing the hook right now and it's gonna dump and never make it up there. That would really stink, guys. To get like that close. I kid you not. 206 was my. I mean, maybe it's just a carrot, you know, carrot on the stick. 206 is like right there. I was where I was at, and then I had that, and it's right there. Like neither of them were hit, so that would be really cruddy. Let it go, Booksy. If it drops, it drops. It's an October call, so there's plenty of time. I just don't want to get screwed, I guess, holding it too long either. All right, so let's see. So Onco is at 315. It's just cruising. I wish I had posted that in the Discord, but I didn't. For now, that's fine. I don't know. I could put like a trailing stop or just wait till it hits 350 and sell it. I can always just set the alert. But I think based on what we were talking about earlier, I think because this is crossed up, I'm thinking it's going to have a gap up moment. I don't know why it wouldn't based on what we've seen previously. So I think tomorrow it could be up pretty far. There's always a first time for something. You originally said Onco would go to 6. It's weird because today you recharted it and see it way differently. Wish I could upload the chart here. You said you thought it could go from 263. And you got the low right, so why not the high? You said 6 is likely. I don't know. Good question. I did get the low right. If I said 263, that's creepy. Oh, I know. Well, so 6 because that's where the that's like long term. I know why I said that, because that's where this tops out here. But the problem with all that is that that doesn't include any of the stuff locally. So you have a lot of potential for a bottom to form before you have a big reaction. What I'm not saying is it couldn't get there. But what I am saying is that that trade doesn't, it's not like the one I would make. So even if you were like a V-shaped recovery here, this is a 50% or 50-degree angle. Most of the time, this doesn't work unless it's a V-shaped recovery, if that makes sense. Like everything has to be kind of perfect for that V-shaped recovery to manifest. And I'm just not a big fan of that. Like if it happens, great. But more and more I've been accustomed to not seeing it happen. So this is where I'm coming from with that, is that, yeah, like this is the drop ledge. This is the place that it kind of lost its steam. But the other logical bottom is like this $4.50 area. And that's really where you can see an early reaction hitting that mark much easier than this. And a lot of times it follows, as it is doing it right now. A lot of times it follows the trajectory. It follows like that first trajectory, but then it builds out longer because you're actually creating like an accumulative bottom. It's the difference between like a short squeeze where it's just immediately back up and it looks like an inverted head and shoulder versus like an actual bottoming structure, which takes a lot longer. So, like I look at this and I'm like, sure, I could see how right now it seems to be following suit, that this is certainly like close to even, up, down, up again kind of thing. But that up again, this is just like a falling pattern. I don't think it's necessarily that it's going to rocket all the way up and go to like that marker right away. And so there's other trajectories here is what I'm trying to say. So like this is another one. This is 18 degrees. This is far lower. And this would suggest that it could get there, but it might take a long time. So like I can pick out other trajectories. This takes till January 2026. That's a long time. What we're talking about right now is like an auto reaction. An auto reaction doesn't typically go back all the way back up here. That's almost never the case. What usually happens in an auto reaction is you'll get like one or two big pumps in that buy-in where it's kind of hit a bottom and then the market's reacting off the bottom and it's going back specifically to retest some major floor, and in most cases it has to be something that wasn't checked. So when we did this, I've got it on this line chart, but let me go back to candles. When we did this, it looked like we were looking at all the different paths. It looked like it did come back up, and it already did test 450. So that it's really like it's kind of pointless, right? It's like, why would you need to check that? You'd have to have a good reason to do it. But it's not impossible. Like it's still there. It's definitely like a ceiling. There's also this area that didn't get checked, which is slightly below that at like 383. That seems very likely for an auto reaction because there was a drop ledge here and it never got back tested more officially. And then so on and so forth. We just kind of like keep picking it apart. And that's what we did, and why we were saying like some of these levels look pretty straightforward. Like it can go right there. But like this doesn't mean anything long term. Like there's no way, even if this was a like there's no guarantee it comes up here by the end of September. Even if this were an inverted head and shoulder, you would expect there to be like another sideways action here, right? And then we'd have to kind of keep going on it. So I'm not in the game right now where I'm trying to buy this kind of a ticker for a 6-month period. If it gets there, great. But for now, I'm of the opinion that we want to see an early push, make that advancement, and then back off. And then we can kind of rinse repeat if we want to keep trading it. So this would be a great place to go right now. And that's why I was saying like 350 seems pretty reasonable. Just for a quick overnight trade if there's a gap up. Like an auto reaction. And even then, like I was saying, I don't necessarily think that has to happen because I was just saying a minute ago, like we could see it come back to like 280s before that pops. I don't see that as unrealistic. This is a strength test, so and then there were these parallels that are going up at this particular angle that also match. So that just kind of adds more fuel to the fire of like, yeah, this probably hits that 380 mark sooner than later, but we're really not talking about $6 until even then we're not talking about that till significantly later. So assuming this did somehow make a support here and then broke again, then we could start talking about, you know, the next layer up, so to speak. And that could be a possibility. I just don't think that's as likely as that would be like one succinct inverted head and shoulder move. I don't see that as likely as a longer term setup that builds a bottom because you have a lot of space here. I don't feel like there'd be any real need to yeah, I mean there's the channel. If you think there's a channel with a pop, there it is. To me, the longer trade makes more sense if you think it's going to go to 6. Because I wouldn't put that. I would put it like out here somewhere on the lower trajectory. So once this makes like an auto reaction and or a phase B top, you could do that like there and then just kind of go back into a sideways schematic. And then realistically, like you could build another range right here and then go up way later. There's no one size fits all for stocks moving, especially if the angle is pretty low. This is just something I would keep in mind. All right. I think this will be my last one. Tricky. Yeah, I remember this and being kind of put off by it's on a different chart, but I remember this and being a little bit put off by the overall setup as a widening because I don't know, it's kind of obvious, right? I know we've done it before. I'm just kind of looking at it again. Seeing if there's anything else I want to change. I don't think there's anything I would change about it. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a messy chart, but it's fairly consistent, so it's kind of using this 32-degree angle quite a bit, so that's interesting. It's pretty much the same angle every time. Yeah, that's the same angle. 32.7. I'm not sure it really matters that much. This is 31, 32.3. Who knows? That's the same angle though. So like realistically, could this be about to take off? Yeah. If you look at the RSI by itself on the 4-hour, you can see that once it makes that jump, there's a backup motion above the moving average, and then it just goes. This one took a long time, so this would have been a bit misleading because this went up like the first move. I always think about like, what would I have done in this time? Because this first move would have been a bit misleading. It would have taken a lot longer, and you can see like that it was until like the third or fourth, so it spends a long time. So one of the things that you could think about in addition to that is when does it actually cross up above the resistance? Where is that resistance at? And if it doesn't cross that resistance, it looks like the same spot every time, then you don't play it, and you can just wait on it. Yeah, it's pretty much the same exact spot every time. So that could have changed because of the split, but it doesn't look like it did. So the only reason why this makes me nervous is because I think it's done. Like, I think this is the sell down. This looks like it right here. That looks like the end. Makes me a little nervous because obviously it didn't come back. Obviously, didn't come back down to the bottom here. And I do wonder if something changed. Like, it'd be really crappy to find out that we're really in like this kind of middle sag period, and you're really just going back up and kind of retesting that top before a bigger drop, in which case this would go down again. So we need to find a way to make sure that's not the case, because you don't want to be buying this and then it drops to like 150. So how do we know? Well, there's a thing right there. So this is a little interesting. So there's one other criteria here, which is that this was above the same mark. It came up to that 45 mark. Boy, the people trading this must have had a lot of fun with just the repetition here, because this is like the exact same thing every time. This hasn't gotten above that. So that means that even if this does go, It's still possible it drops because this could be like a little kitty cat here. So we can't say it couldn't. Even if it does go, it still probably need to come back down. Maybe by earnings on the 19th. This is also kind of around earnings. This is also kind of around earnings. So I get why, again, you're like, well, that's pretty similar. But this dropped on earnings. This dropped, but it was already where it needed to be. Gosh, this is a tough one. What if it's already out of its thing, you know? Like it's already out of that creek. Where's it going to go? There's like a secondary marker here. It might be wise. That's like $8. I don't know. I don't know why it did that every time. There must have been something in view, but I'm not really sure what it was. Anyways, I know I already did this, so. But this makes me nervous because I think that it's possible, although it would be a little odd, because this came up again and it already got pretty high on the, it's certainly a possibility there's a second dump involved, like another one. Which is unusual, but it's sort of like, I can't really tell. This is what I was trying to get at. I can't really tell. It's just not possible. I don't know. Either way, I don't know why you'd do it before earnings. You might as well just wait. I hate these kind of charts. I really do. I'm trying to find out if there's like an indication that there is a level here that seems to be the same as well for this ledge, this level. It's weirdly repetitive, which is strange. I just find that to be so odd. Yeah, and that goes down halfway. This doesn't. What was this price before the split, I wonder? because I can see the reaction here. This clearly hits the top and then pushes low. It's a little ledge that's built at 350. And then it drops in. So there's this kind of sideways action here that drops in. That's the main downward motion. And then when it builds back out, it's just a series of up thrusts. It's kind of widening. And then this is like a hook. So the rest of this motion is all like distribution. Like we're going back up to sell our shares back down. So by comparison, these are kind of the same because this has this big motion and then it comes back up at the end to try to sell it back through that level. So like you can see the motion is different, but it's also not. Like it's the same thing. This is like this the buy back in right here. And then the rest of this really is just a chop back up and out just to kind of like finish it off. So it's very possible that this little M cross right here, which is kind of where I was before, is indeed like the final sell down. It's just so different because of the pacing of it, but then also yeah, it's so far up there. This is fairly close too to where this is, which is kind of interesting. Really close to that early level. So there's like another one. I did it up here. There's actually kind of another one right there. And this is what's odd is it just doesn't quite get there. Never gets there. All right, so regardless of what happens next, at some point, and it doesn't look like you're going to miss the boat because there's not been an instance. This is, if anything, this is moving slower. There hasn't been an instance where this just took off and left. So unless we're mistaken about this, and this is actually like a breakout already. Like I don't know why you wouldn't expect this to kind of come back. You know, and like build out again. I'm not saying 1-to-1, but it's in the right spot for it. My only concern again is that I just don't know. What if it's not dropped yet? Because it doesn't match any of these other ones. This is a stupid thing to get upset about, but. And then they all have confirmation. So this went higher. This is very, very, very small, but it does come above that last little ledge. There's a little ledge right there. It does advance right here. So definitely did the advancement that you would expect. This absolutely goes way above the previous little drop ledge. So if we're right that this is indeed like where it should be, it should come above this level at like 320. It should hit like 340 or something. May even go way beyond that. It could be like a $4 move instead. I don't really want to get into too much of that because either way it's fine. It would be fine. It could, I mean, it could be fine, I should say. Again, I would be just most nervous about a kind of a false break here. Like we're thinking that this is done and this cat ear is really just distributing. So it pops up and then on earnings this comes like way down. And then it goes, you know. And this is still part of that main function of downside, like that hooking motion down here. Then it does this stuff where it comes up, you know, breaks high. And then consolidates. And goes again. So, you know, it's one of those tickers where you probably are going to have a hard time maybe going into earnings. I think there's going to be a lot of volatility potentially. I wouldn't be surprised if it pumped ahead of earnings and then dumped like as earnings takes place or something like that, and then has like a squeeze moment. Because really what this is would be like coming into a it kind of makes sense too because where this is. Anyways, if I entered now, I'd be cautious about it going up above, 340. Because it's like none of these really advanced in one go. They have a pretty big backup. So if it went now and it popped to like 340, it's odd, but it would have to come all the way back. Because, I mean, like each of these comes back to that creek level, which is why I'm questioning it, why I'm sitting here humming and hawing, because the advancements are there, but they're very deep retracements, you know, after they pop. So they kind of almost lose like most of their value at least once. They lose at least like 60 to 70% after that first pop. This one's only like 50, but still. And these have really harsh spikes. This is a very soft bottom. It's very strange, and it did come up above. So I'm just concerned. I can't really see what else. If there's something else to be seen, I don't know what it is. Sorry. There's probably something I'm missing. Aside from like it being like a big picture distributive action, that could be the piece that's missing here, is that it's not really going to go back above. I'm thinking about this now. I'm like, could just kind of stop at 450. you know, especially given how mild this bottom is. It's very strange. I wonder if it takes a long time, kind of builds out into like 450 instead of being like a really crazy thing. It kind of makes sense of the rest of it because this is like pushing up, trying to get there, and this is this big distributive action. So yeah, and then this follows the bottom. So like all that's left is like you could either drop here and hit the low of like 150 and then go to 450, you know, big wave down and then back up again. So you certainly could see something like that if it was like an inverted. It really screwed with people's expectations, right? But that could make some sense just depending on what happened right here. If this dropped again, you'd be pretty far away from that trend. So you could potentially drop and then have a big reaction later. Something like this, you know, down low. It wouldn't be inconsistent with what we've seen because this is typically where it's been. So, I mean, like, that would be fairly consistent. It's definitely not what it looks like right this second. It looks like it's getting ready to go because it's just sitting right on the edge. I just don't know. And it already got overbought or oversold, but that's why I'm concerned. I think it's a bit misleading because it's very wide and slow. That's why I'm not sure that I would trust a pop right this second. Not yet. Yeah, because of this. But there's some other odd stuff going on here, and I don't think that I don't remember last time I looked at it looking much at that trend. So that might be a big problem. Let me see here. What if it's gonna rain today? Looks rainy out. Well, so in these ones, I'm just kind of working through this. I know I've seen it like 12 different ways, but on these ones, that pop, first pop, this ends up coming back to it. And the same thing here, this first pop, this ends up coming back to it. So that wouldn't bode well. That would suggest this is going to drop really low. It's not as consistent as it once was. What else there is? There's this distribution. You could ignore the pop, and you could suggest it's more about the top from up here. Now that's the same level. See that? And then same thing here, right there. So this marker to this marker. So if you change this to that point of view, instead of looking at it like a bunch of series of runs, just look at it as like a just look at it as a series of parallels. You could see this guy, this guy, this guy. I wonder why those are going where they're going. It doesn't really make any sense. Granted, there was a split, and there's also like these guys were these guys. I keep saying these guys like it's people. These return though back to that value, and they go down along it twice right here. They didn't do that here. They stopped it The market stopped, I should say, a lot sooner than that. So it's possible that this is in view, but it's really like this. And that is consistent. That's the same thing right there. That would be consistent with what we would expect. So this could be extremely dramatic, or it could be extremely not dramatic. You could have it drop almost immediately and not really go up anymore. But I wonder, because of this, if we're really like in this stage where we're really just crossing up and over, like I said, we're kind of in the middle of two ears. Like this is like ear one, and there's going to be an ear two, and then it's going to drop. This has the same effect. There's a secondary motion here where it drops below, and then it comes back above, and then drops. Drops below, comes back above, and then drops. It's possible. So that would actually look like it would look like a run, but then it would go, so do some kind of crazy like multi-upthrust motion right here, like boom, 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 and then that's just to get shorts on board and sellers, they could sell, and then it would like drop down. It had to be fast. It's just confusing because of how flat this is. It's so confusing, and it looks like it already did it. So you're like, oh, it's just going to go now. That's why I don't like this. That's why I just said I'm like, I hate this kind of setup. Because at a glance, I'm like, yeah, it looks ready to go. But then I'm like thinking about how, well, I mean, these drops are all kind of off the same ledge. And I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that drop. You know, it looks like it's right up underneath it. So it would pop to like 299 or something and then just drop. Yeah, you can see right here, here, and here. What a weird chart. I can't remember the last time I did something like this. This is kind of bizarre, the way we're doing it. It's like layered up thrusts that are kind of consistent. Yeah, so that it does, and then yeah, it doesn't follow that mold. So that's the other thing. Is notice like back here they did drop off kind of in a similar spot. Like they came up above that mark, but they didn't actually hold on it. See how it like rejects on it, and then it goes higher and then drops. Then it comes back up and holds. And the same thing here. There's an early cross up, but it doesn't hold. It just like rejects, and then it comes up and holds and goes. So it's like an attempt to jump up high and go early. It looks like it's going to go right here. That's actually the second ear. It's about to drop. It's still part of the distribution phase. At first I thought it was this, but then I'm like, you know, or this, but then I was like, you know, this is not, it's not really that clear. So it's clear as mud, I suppose. This one has a drop right into earnings, so it's certainly a possibility. I'm trying to, all right, we need to distill this. We need to distill it to like a single idea. This is too complicated. There's too many like if-then statements, and it doesn't make sense when you do stuff like that. It ends up just being convoluted. I'm of the opinion, I'm going to just say it. If I have to pick one thing, I'm of the opinion, I've kind of convinced myself. I'm of the opinion that this might pop as high as like 296. The reason for that is there is like a little bitty trend here that was lost. And I think what we're doing is we're doing like that classic compression at the end. The reason why it's so convincing is because there's a good divergence, I suppose, on the RSI right here that looks really strong on that 4 hour. So it looks like it's just going to melt up. And I'll give you that. However, I don't necessarily think that means it couldn't come down again in the shorter term. And it may not ever make another low. Like I've got it going really low. It can make a bigger divergence on the RSI at some point. We don't know. But I suspect this level where that gap is right here at 292 is indeed retested. But I think, yeah, there's like this other creek, this wider creek here. I think that if it doesn't jump like 294, I think this is probably not going anywhere. It's probably just a head fake. And then what happens next is pretty ugly. Yeah, it's going to go back to this creek, which is way, 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 way low. I'm going to be so wrong about this if I'm wrong. I'm going to be so right about it if I'm right. It's going to come back through here. This would be consistent with expectations, though, because if it did this, it follows the same pattern as all the others did. So it has like one more push up. You never know. Maybe it does go a little bit farther, but I think it'd be that area around 299. It probably would not make a higher high. And if it does, it'll like immediately slide back underneath and start breaking back through creeks, which will be like your signal that this is not good. And then it'll sell through the bottom again. You know, the other question you could ask is, well, these two bottoms are pretty close together. Why not this one just not go down? Well, I don't know. I mean, if that's what happens, that's what happens. It's as low as it goes. I don't really care if it goes all the way down to 157 versus staying at 233. It's more about that as a final like drop. Once that's done, then the buy up should happen. And I don't know exactly where it's going to be, but I would suspect that much like these, it should be right up underneath here and then off that ledge, because these are often building out a ledge, which is what this looks like. So it should be right back up around 263. So this is where you'd get like a pop to like 358, and then at 263 or thereabouts. And you might have a couple different backup points, but it'd be roughly around this area. This is where you'd want to sort of see that consolidation. And then ultimately you buy in at like 274, that motion right there. And then this is where I don't know. The longer term chart could be a massive cat ear where this is going to come back up and try to reach to high peaks. But I'm looking at this as a series of parallels, and I'm like, it could just stop there at 450. And that might just be the nature of this as a 1, 2, 3, 4, and the 4 is just a hook. So I would not suppose that this has to go past, even though I said earlier I think it goes higher, or possibly goes higher if it holds. If this ends up dropping down low, I don't know if I would suggest it goes past 450. I'm not saying it can't. I just don't think I would put a whole lot of money into that, you know. Assuming it did, I think the next level up is this $9 mark here, but I don't know. To me, that looks like it looks like kind of like a final drop, and then you're gonna check back test and then decide if you're gonna go down. Because it was split, this might be exactly what they're trying to do, is just get like a final gut check and take it up one more time, sell it, and then start a new trend down. Not everything lasts forever in the market. Things change, so you can see these shakeouts eventually end in like that hook. This is a good example back here. There's like multiple shakeouts that go really high, but in the end, they just stop going as high and they start dropping. And I'm wondering if we're going to see something like that start here, where maybe this does go up past 450 a little bit, but then it just doesn't go that far. Maybe it hits finally, it hits like that floor at 556 or something and just doesn't go. And that's like the rejection point. I think that's what happened back here too. I was looking over it trying to determine, it's like that level. Right here. So yeah. So I'd say 450 up to like 570, and then probably that's it. And I think it's more than likely going to have repeated up thrust again, but just the way it's going, it's downtrend. Yeah, just goes down or whatever. And there'll probably be some bigger moments. CAVA lost 20%. That's a good one. We should look at that. It's whatever time it is. It's 3:16, so probably gonna stop. But I do think tomorrow we can kind of hit it again in the morning. If you're somebody that's interested in doing the trading thing with me, there's no rush. You can start any week you want because my goal every week is kind of the same thing. It's totally up to you. But I do think that on the whole, there we go, came back down. Good. Actually, that's kind of a good thing. I'm happy that it did that because I didn't really want this to happen. On the whole, I would suggest that you just decide what you want to start with, and you have in mind that you're going to have your own trading plan. Like I can't do it for you. So that's something to think about. Actually, NNOX looks pretty good. I think it's going to pop and go to 7. Anywho, this is a good time to do it. I think we've only got a couple more weeks here, if possible, big moves going into September, and then we're going to have a bit of a lull. And that lull is going to be tricky. Some of them will be okay, like individual tickers, but it's going to be a bit tricky, I think. So we can get those trades in early and get the first couple weeks going. I think we get some good momentum. I'll look at CAVA, but I got to be brief because I got to go. I got some things I got to do. What is Kava? That's just... I'm going to just say right now I probably wouldn't touch it because most of these sell downs have been really long-winded. Like as soon as it hits that oversold, you might think it's ready to buy, but these have been walking through, it's in a downtrend. So it failed right here to cross up, and then it hooked. But yeah, like it gets oversold, and then it just chops down. Like look at these extra downtrends after it's oversold. Like they're massive. And this one kept going till forever, till like way over here. Now there's a breaking point for these, which is nice. I know there's a gap. That could be, I guess that could be an argument. There's a breaking point for these that looks consistent as well. So right here, and then right here, and then right here. So there seems to be a, I mean, it's a trend. It's a 36 RSI hit. And it kind of did the same thing back here as well. So this is like a common buy-up zone, I guess. Yeah, maybe around 36 to 38, where the market seems to value it a little bit more. Like it likes that retest. Not sure why, but it does. So ideally, this has some kind of divergence, but we may not get it. And most of these have been pretty long-term down, even though were already oversold. Yeah, so this dipped low is a weakness after trying to like, this is pretty bad. Well, that's pretty straightforward. We can leave that. That's fairly straightforward. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this looks like roughly like a widening spread. It's not a perfect widening spread, but it's definitely there on the way up. So I'm thinking that it's probably coming all the way back down. And I don't know for a fact it's going to get there. There's other places you can anchor this. You could do it from here instead. That's still a widening. So the spread has been widening for a while. It may even be better to do it to this one instead of the other. Just to start. But you can tell like there's more of that here. I mean, it's the same kind of idea. It just keeps going up and getting wider and wider and wider and wider and wider and wider and wider. So that tells me that unfortunately that a correction here could come back quite far. This is one level, and then the second one is here. This is a little wider, or excuse me, a little less wide. But this is the previous top. So more than likely, you don't see it just keep dropping all the way down to $40. At least not immediately. But like, more than likely, it's gonna try to walk itself down to 58. I wouldn't be surprised if that's where we get this kind of chop, since it's already made that dump. There could be a bit of a reaction at first. I don't know. There's already been a little more of a reaction with that volume. So if it continues to dump and does this, then I'm looking at 58. But who knows? That could take a little while. And then if it, I'm not sure why I have that where I have it. I don't know. The only situation where this is really bullish all of a sudden is if this is like a shallow S-curve and this is their attempt to get back to the beginning of the widening, which you could interpret the beginning of the widening as like the center of that first trend here. So, I mean, that's pretty darn close. I don't like to do it that way, but you could do it. I usually just look at where the top and bottom are and just pick one. That's the top. That's the bottom. Should probably be the bottom. But you guess you could do it in the middle. That's where the widening starts. I don't know. But I mean, this has a long ways it could go. So this is also widening 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's pretty darn close to what I was thinking anyways. Yeah, I think it's very likely that it doesn't work out and this goes down to the bottom here. But if it were bullish, the only way I could see this as bullish is if this were to come all the way back up here. And then it has to jump like multiple creeks. So you'd probably see it on the RSI first. You'd see some kind of a creek jump here. But there'd also have to be a like a retest there on like 71. Let me see where that is. Like right there. And even that, I'm like, pff. It's a nice reaction, but it's not ultimately out until it's out. So yeah, it makes no difference. There's zero difference between the two. One is like 84 by September 3rd, kind of a back test on that moving average perhaps. It's hard to see why you'd need to do that because of how much time was spent here in the distribution. And like in previous times when that happened, it didn't come back for a long time. So I don't know why you need to do it immediately. This feels like something you could do way over here and get away with it. Like kind of crap out and then start going down and then come back up later and still test it. So high risk, maybe a little too pricey for the risk. But if it came back above and it held support here and jumped over, then you've got a good play, I think. Well, you made good money on it. But I don't know if at this point, this is going to like kill everything. So I don't know. If it does chop like this, it's not going to be as lucrative. The big move is kind of done for now. In my opinion, it won't do anything too much crazier. But the better setup for upside would be once this kind of regains its footing. So if this chops for a bit here and it regains its footing there at some point in the future, I don't know, I've got it like way late. These are timing's all off, but you get what I mean. This one actually goes up and over and then still came down again. So you could have something like that too, like this. So maybe there'll be some like bigger reactions, Really don't know what it's going to look like. It's too far off in the future, but there could be a really good upside play on this once it gets back to here, since that's very consistent. That's very, very consistent. I don't know what else I would do with it right now. It just made this big drop. I'm kind of like inclined to just leave it alone. I think it could slump down a little more, but it might take a little while. Sort of like this. It's just the way it's been walked down. And then even if it's a 5 wave and it's just coming back to retrace to here and it's going to recover and then, I don't know, somehow do well into next year and have a big move up. Some kind of January squeeze moment, which is whatever. We could talk about that at that time, $90 or something like that, 92. even if that were to happen, I'd probably say you need to see like a better bottom form. It might even look like a little mini version of this. That'd be nice. Like those kind of plays. A mini version of this that doesn't drop again, you know? Like that doesn't go lower. That instead of breaking down, it like has a proper finish and then takes off into January or something. That'd be cool. And even then, I'm not sure where it would go, but you probably have to like come back and look. I was thinking like $90 because that was like this second peak, roughly. I could see that. All right, I gotta go. I'm not gonna be able to do anything else, so I did my best. Pick it up again tomorrow. I'll try to be up early starting this next week for sure, if not tomorrow. And I'll catch you all on the flip side. I hope you have a good one.